Chapter 1343. She saw a scarecrow standing on the left side of the field. The scarecrow didn't look like a common scarecrow. It was just a simple straw standing there. Instead, it wore flowery clothes and a pointed black hat on top of the straw. Both of its hands were spread out against the wind, and its back was facing her. The long flowery clothes covered the bamboo that supported the straw in the field. It was so dark that it looked like someone was carrying her on his back. However, the person's body was stiff and full of strangeness. She steadied her mind and looked away. However, when her gaze landed on a spot, her breath froze. She saw a figure lying in the field, soaked in water. In the dim light, she could vaguely see that it was a child of about 4 or 5 years old. However, when she scanned it with her divine sense, she couldn't detect any signs of life. Dead? A thought popped into her mind. She walked over from the road to the other side. Walking on the small path in the field, her shoes stepped on the wet mud, and it was a little troublesome to walk. However, when she arrived there to take a look, she was stunned and frowned slightly. From afar, it looked like a child. However, when she looked closer, she realized that it was a rag doll. It was a rag doll that was sewn with tattered clothes. It was about the size of a 4 or 5-year-old child, and it was lying there with its face down. She took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. She raised her eyes and looked into the distance. Because the sky was dark, she could only vaguely see that there were scarecrows standing in the wind in many places. In this pitch-black place without any smoke or fire, it was filled with a strange aura. She left the small path and returned to the original path. She rubbed her feet on the dry sand on the ground and rubbed away the red mud on the soles of her shoes. Then, she continued to walk forward. After walking for a while, she saw an abandoned rag doll on the road. The rag doll was made to look like a 4 or 5-year-old child, but the clothes on it were different. What was even stranger was that the rag doll's face looked as if it had makeup on, and it was even grinning. The rag doll's face had eyebrows, eyes, a nose, a mouth, and red cheeks. It looked very strange no matter how she looked at it. After walking for a while, she saw some broken dolls on the side of the road from time to time. There were also some headless dolls that were carelessly thrown on the side of the road. Listening to the sound of insects in the night, she frowned. She was the only one in this empty place. Occasionally, strange and creepy things would appear, causing her to pause her footsteps. It was pitch black inside. It was said to be a small town, but she couldn't see a single person. There should be no one here. It was better for her not to go in. Moreover, this strange and terrifying feeling made her feel uncomfortable all over. Thinking of this, she decided to take advantage of the fact that she had just entered to leave. However, just as she was about to turn around and leave, she suddenly heard a hoarse and old voice. He must be a foreigner. That voice that came out of nowhere gave her a fright. When that hoarse and old voice suddenly came out of nowhere, anyone would be frightened. In particular, she had clearly probed the surrounding area earlier, and there was not the slightest bit of human aura. How could a person suddenly appear? Therefore, with vigilance, she looked in the direction of the voice. Chapter 1344. Looking at it, it was as if the red lantern was the only thing moving towards her in the dark night. However, as the lantern neared her, a hunchbacked old woman in black clothes holding the red lantern also entered her sight. Seeing the strange appearance of the old woman, she sized her up without batting an eyelid. Then, she opened her mouth and asked, "Old lady, are you from this small town?" The hunchbacked old woman raised her eyes to look at Fungio, then turned around and walked back. "This is not the place to talk. Follow me." Seeing this, Fungio hesitated for a moment, but still followed her. "Big sister, don't go. Big sister, play with me." Suddenly, a voice came from behind her, causing her hair to stand on end. Her entire body trembled. She saw that the rag dolls that had been abandoned by the roadside and in the fields actually seemed to come alive under the moonlight. One by one, they crawled up and surrounded her. "Big sister, don't go. Big sister, play with me." A rag doll walked stiffly towards her, its eyebrows drooping. It pursed its lips and said, "Big sister, play with me, whoosh." While she was still in a daze, the hunchbacked old woman with the red lantern pinched a spar from the red lantern and flicked it towards the surroundings. For a moment, cries of shock and hatred filled the air. Ghost Granny, hateful Ghost Granny. The ragdoll that was coming towards her was hit by the fireball and let out a hiss. It fell to the ground and wailed like a ghost. That sound made one's hair stand on end. "Let's go," the hunchbacked old woman in front said, then slowly moved forward with the red lantern in her hand. Fengjiu calmed himself down, glanced at the figure, and followed her until they arrived at a place that looked like an ancestral hall. "Sit anywhere," the hunchbacked old woman said, then hung the lantern up and went to the back. Not long after, she came back with 2 pancakes and handed them to Fengjiu. "Thank you." As she spoke, she took one of the pieces but did not eat it. Instead, she asked, "Elder, why is this place so strange?" Yes, strange. From a moment she entered this place, she had not sensed any yin qi. It did not seem like a place where lonely souls wandered around. However, those dolls just now seemed to have come alive as if they had been possessed by ghosts. However, she clearly did not sense any ghosts. Since there were no ghosts, then what were they? "That's a wraith." As the hunchbacked old woman spoke, she took a bite of the biscuit and said, "Wraiths aren't ghosts, but they are similar to ghosts. The difference is that ghosts are of the yin attribute and like the cold and gloomy, while wraiths like to attach themselves to people with heavy grievances." Hearing this, Fengjiu was slightly startled. He lowered his head and glanced at himself. With a strange expression, he said, "I have resentment on me? There shouldn't be any, right?" How could there be resentment on her body? The hunchbacked old woman glanced at her and said in a hoarse and old voice, "If you had resentment on you, you wouldn't have been able to walk in here. You wouldn't have lived to see me. Then what's the reason? Those wraiths actually asked me to play with them." Just thinking about the scene just now made her hair stand on end. It was too strange. Chapter 1345. You have a pure spiritual aura. The old woman looked at Fengjiu. "You're not a beggar, are you? A beggar would definitely not have such a pure spiritual aura." Hearing this, Fengjiu's expression changed slightly. He glanced at the old woman and nodded. "Yes, I'm outside alone. It's safer to change into a beggar's outfit." "Sister, sister, play with me. Sister, play with me." The childlike voice came from outside again. That voice carried traces of crying faintly. However, compared to the pitch black outside, in this ancestral hall with lanterns and candlelight, that voice was much less terrifying. She looked outside and asked, "Why can't they come in?" This place did not look special. So why did those resentful spirits not dare to come in? Because they're afraid that I'll refine them, so they don't dare to come in. The hunchbacked old woman said as she continued to eat the biscuit. Hearing this, Fengjiu was startled. "Refine them? How?" The old woman raised her dark eyes and looked at her. Instead of answering, she asked, "Do you know where the resentful spirits come from?" "I don't know." She shook her head honestly. She really did not know. She only knew that there were ghosts, who knew that there were these things called resentful spirits. They did not have any ghost aura at all. Who knew where they came from? Ghosts are the souls of people after they die. They are called ghosts, but vengeful spirits are spiritual beings born from resentment. To put it bluntly, they're just like some treasured swords that have sword spirits. They are born from the sword and are the guardian spirits of the sword. However, vengeful spirits are far inferior to spiritual beings like sword spirits because they have resentment. Fengjiu listened. She said a lot, but still did not tell her why the resentful spirits were afraid that she would refine them. Just as she was thinking about it, she stood up and slowly walked outside after finishing the pancakes. Seeing this, she also followed. She saw many cloth dolls standing or squatting outside. Even the scarecrows had come. They surrounded and shouted outside, not far away. She was very surprised to see this. What made her even more surprised was that a black shadow flashed in front of her. The hunchbacked old woman reached out and grabbed a cloth doll. She guided it with one hand, as if she was pulling something away. Granny Ghost is so scary. The rag dolls and scarecrows that were originally surrounding the old woman cried out in alarm and quickly dispersed. Not a single one of them was left behind, leaving only the ball of cloth that was struggling in the old woman's hand. Just as she was astonished by the change in the scene, she saw that within a few breaths, the old woman's hand seemed to be guiding something as she pulled out a ball of light from the rag doll and pinched it in her hand. That feeling to her was as casual as pinching a rag. Ah! Help! Ghost Granny is so scary. That ball of light that looked like cotton candy jumped around. It wanted to escape, but couldn't. It was pinched flat in his hand and walked back. Was that ball of light a vengeful spirit? She was slightly startled and found it hard to believe. Those that were related to the word spirit were indeed much better looking than those that were related to ghosts. At the very least, this ball of light was pleasing to the eye. Moreover, this old woman was really powerful. She was actually able to grab the vengeful spirit and pull it out with just one move. Chapter 1346. The hunchbacked old woman rubbed her hands together and crushed the ball of light formed by the vengeful spirit into a ball before stuffing it into her mouth. She smacked her lips and swallowed it just like that. She opened her mouth wide in disbelief. She ate it? She thought in a daze. The hunchbacked old woman's body, which originally had no spiritual power surging, emitted wisps of hot smoke at this moment. The heat from her body was like an open stove, and even she, who was standing at the side, could feel the heat emanating from her body. She rubbed her stomach with her hand, and a surge of spiritual power condensed in her palm. After about half an hour, she burped, and the heat on her body gradually dissipated. Then, she opened her mouth and spat out a fist-sized ball of light. She looked at the ball of light, which had shrunk by nearly half, in surprise. This was the resentful spirit? Although the resentful spirit from before was also a ball of light, that ball of light was stained with traces of black aura. However, the ball of light in front of her was snow white, without any trace of black aura. Could this be the refinement she was talking about? Chirp! The fist-sized ball of light in the hunchbacked old woman's hand gradually condensed and took shape. It rolled around like a cotton flower and let out a chirp. Then, a small baby-like face emerged from the snow-white ball of light. Chirp, chirp. She stared blankly at the little thing that was as white as a cotton flower. It was actually blinking its clear eyes and chirping at her like a little beast. She couldn't help but be stunned. This is a vengeful spirit. This is a resentful spirit that has been refined. A resentful spirit without resentment is no longer a resentful spirit. The old woman placed the flower-like ball of light in Fengjiu's hand. If it's not a resentful spirit, then what is it? She looked at the ball of light in her hand. It was actually a solid object and not just a ball of light. The snow-white thing in her hand was just like what she had seen. It was as soft as a cotton flower. When she rubbed it, it actually turned into a ball. Even that little face was rubbed into it. However, when that little thing was tossed aside, that little face popped out again. That little face was so cute that she simply could not bear to part with it. Yuanling. The old woman walked in slowly and said, "The spirit of the primordial beginning is a pure spirit that is not tainted by any evil or resentment. It is called the primordial spirit." Primordial spirit? Fengjiu muttered softly as she looked at the pure, snow-white ball of light in her hand. In her eyes, it looked like a ball of cotton flowers. She opened her hand and saw the little thing jumping around in her hand. It was not afraid of strangers, nor was it afraid of her. That's right, a refined origin spirit can be used as a pill spirit. When you add it into a pill, the grade and medicinal properties of the pill will be greatly improved. Not only that, but the origin spirit can also be fused into an artifact spirit. You can even infuse it into any object to form an artifact spirit. Hearing this, Fengjiu frowned and said, "Why haven't I heard of it before?" Moreover, wasn't it said that something similar to an artifact spirit was formed by the artifact and was born from the artifact? If that's the case, artifact spirits wouldn't be so rare. You can perform spirit refinement? The hoarse and aged voice rang out. She was startled for a moment. Recalling the scene of her directly swallowing the vengeful spirit, she could not help but shake her head. No, Chapter 1347. Fengjiu shook her head again. No, she had only met ghosts. The old woman sat down and said, "The people in this town have moved away a long time ago because there are resentful spirits here. They thought they were ghosts, so they hired a Taoist priest to deal with them, but they couldn't deal with them. In the end, they could only move away." Hearing her answer the first question she had asked, Fengjiu's eyes moved slightly, and she quietly listened. This hunchbacked old woman gave her a very strange feeling, like a hidden expert who had withdrawn from the world in the countryside. Everyone in this town had left, and she was the only one who had stayed. In this kind of place, an old woman was living alone, and the only person who accompanied her was the resentful spirit outside. The so-called spirit enhancement was a method she had never seen or heard of. Swallowing that resentful spirit and using her own body as a furnace, she could really refine a pure, snow-white original spirit like a cotton flower. From her words, it seemed that she had long seen through her identity as a woman, and also knew that she was an alchemist. Otherwise, she wouldn't have told her that the original spirit could be refined into a pill. However, why would such a person tell her these things? What she said was like spreading her knowledge, telling her things she had never come into contact with. For a person who had just met her, saying these things seemed a little abnormal. However, she didn't feel any killing intent from her. Even so, she still felt a faint uneasiness in her heart, because the person in front of her was unfathomable, making her feel like she was in danger. Her sixth sense had always been very accurate, and it was because of this that she felt that this old woman was strange. However, although she was vigilant in her heart and secretly guarded against this old woman, she didn't show it on her face. Even her actions and expressions showed that this old woman was a good person who had helped her. Yes, up until now, she had indeed helped her, so it was normal for her to show trust and gratitude. "They have all moved away, but I like it here and have lived here for many years, so I can't bear to leave." Saying this, she raised her head, and her eyes that were like dry wells calmly glanced at Fengjiu. It was clearly a very ordinary glance, but in Fengjiu's eyes, that glance seemed to have a different meaning. When that glance fell on her body, her heart sank slightly, but she smiled and narrowed her eyes and said in a light tone, "Many things are habits, like me. I like to wear beggar clothes and walk around. And it's all habits." The hunchbacked old woman replied, and lowered her head to hide her eyes. She pulled out a toothpick-sized red thread from her sleeve and sat there, tying it. Seeing this, Fengjiu took out the cake that the old woman had given her. She looked at the sesame seeds sprinkled on the cake, and her eyes flashed. She took a bite. "Old man, why can your body be used as a furnace? If that's the case, won't your body be unable to take it?" she asked while eating the cake. She raised her head to look at Fengjiu and said slowly in an old voice, "No, because my body is a furnace." "Then what about this original soul?" She pointed at the little thing that was as white as a cotton flower on her shoulder. "This little thing is like this? It seems to like me?" Chapter 1348. Fengjiu lowered her eyes, hiding the light that flashed through her eyes, because her aura was clean. This was not the first time the old woman had said this. "Old woman, how is this resentful spirit formed?" Her voice was soft and slow, with a trace of curiosity. "It is formed by gathering the essence of heaven and earth. The first resentful spirit formed is a primordial spirit. It has no fixed residence and drifts everywhere. After it swallows resentment, it becomes a resentful spirit." Her old and hoarse voice paused, looking at Fengjiu. "Little girl, do you have anything else to ask?" "Yes." She stood up with one hand on her stomach, wrinkling her face. "Old woman, where's the outhouse? My stomach hurts a little." The old woman glanced at her, pointing to the side with her skinny hand. "Go straight there and turn around." "Oh, I thought it was behind." She looked at the back of the ancestral hall. "Then you better not go in behind." As the old woman spoke, she lowered her head and tied the red rope in her hand. "It's best not to go outside. It's troublesome to be entangled by resentful spirits." "Okay, I know. I'll be back in a while." As she spoke, She walked in the direction the old woman pointed, still holding the refined, primordial spirit in her hand. When she was out of the line of sight of the people behind her, her harmless expression changed. Her eyes narrowed, and her face turned cold. She did not look back as she walked. She put the primordial spirit in her hand into the space. After putting it away, she came to the so-called outhouse. She crossed the outhouse and quickly rushed out of the town under the cover of the night. This place was dangerous. That old woman was even more dangerous. Her intuition told her that if she did not escape now, she would not be able to escape. Sister, sister, play with me, sister. Sister, sister, don't go. Play with me, play with me. In the darkness of the night, the rag dolls chased after her. Childish voices rang out from behind her, echoing in the darkness of the night. It was an extremely eerie sight. Sister, play with me, play with me. Fengjiu looked back and saw that in addition to the rag dolls and scarecrows chasing after her, there were several balls of light dyed with black gas flying towards her. Stop chasing me. If you keep chasing me, I won't hold back anymore. She didn't know how to perform spirit refinement, but it was more than enough to deal with them. However, doing so would definitely consume her physical strength and spiritual power. Before she was out of danger, she had to prioritize her survival. That old woman is too dangerous. She is too powerful. She is not a nascent soul realm cultivator, but a fairy realm cultivator. She had only seen fairy realm experts, but she had never exchanged blows with a fairy realm expert before. Thus, she couldn't do something that she had no confidence in. Sister, play with me, play with me. Her speed was extremely fast, and she didn't stop at all as she rushed out of the town. When she could faintly see the town gate through the moonlight, she increased her speed again. Almost there. After leaving the strange town, the old woman probably wouldn't chase after him anymore. However, at this moment, an old and hoarse voice sounded from behind her. That voice was slightly strange, as if it was echoing in the sky, and clearly entered her ears. Little girl, where are you going? A black figure came from behind her like a ghost. In a flash, it was so fast that only the sound of black clothes could be heard. Because of the old woman's appearance, the vengeful spirits that were following behind Fengjiu cried out in alarm. Chapter 1349. Fengjiu only felt a gust of cold wind sweep past her. The wind was so strong, and the wind blade was so sharp that it swept her away with a swoosh. She took advantage of the momentum to do a somersault in the air and steadied herself. She then looked at the figure who was standing 3 meters away from her. The old woman's black robes fluttered in the night wind and made a whistling sound. Her back was hunched, and she held a white walking stick with both hands. On top of the walking stick was a small baby skull. Her entire aura changed and became cold and bloodthirsty. Her eyes, which were as dry as a well, had a strange blood-red color. She stared at Fengjiu and said, "Little girl, it's dangerous outside. Come back with me quickly." However, Fengjiu took one look at her and quickly retreated. She turned around and ran in the other direction. "Don't run. You can't escape." A faint and hoarse voice rang out in the wind. Strange laughter rang out in the night sky. The old woman looked at the figure who was running into the night sky, and her aged voice carried a trace of excitement. "Ultimate spiritual body. How rare. I really want it. I really want it." At the same time, she raised the walking stick in her hand and shook it on the ground. In an instant, 2 streams of blood gushed out from the 2 eye sockets of the human skull. They flowed down the skull until the blood seeped into the ground. The pitch-black ground changed in an instant. It was as if something had been lit up. Streaks of blood-red light seeped out from the ground and intertwined to form a large net. It spread towards Fengjiu. Fengjiu, who was running away, heard the words behind her, and her heart trembled. This old witch knew that she had the ultimate spiritual body. How did she know? Did she target her because of this? No matter what, she had to get out of here first. However, as she was running away, she suddenly saw a large net of blood spread out on the ground. The blood was glowing red and intertwined to form a large net that spread out in all directions. She narrowed her eyes and was shocked. Is that blood? In such a place, there was actually so much blood hidden under the ground. She had been here for so long, but did not detect the slightest smell of blood. Could it be a barrier? The blood underground had been sealed and solidified by the enchantment. Once the seal was undone and the enchantment was broken, the blood underground could no longer be suppressed and began to rise. However, why did the blood form such a strange net of blood? She turned around and saw the old woman standing there and staring at her while laughing. Her voice was sharp and piercing. It gradually grew louder and louder with spiritual energy in the night sky. Little girl, you can't escape. Don't waste your energy. Begin to come back. The old woman's eyes, where she was standing, of the blood of the place where she was escaping. At this moment, the blood net that was woven from the blood on the ground extended in front of her and actually turned back. It was as if a large net was about to close up and trap her in the middle. Chapter 1350. His figure dashed out of the blood web and disappeared into the night in a few breaths of time. The old woman's eyes flashed. She looked at the big hole burned by the flames and then looked into the night. After a long time, she laughed in a low voice. I didn't expect you to have some ability. You even managed to break the blood web. As expected of someone with a profound spiritual body, you're different. However, you can't escape. With that, she went in search of Fengjiu. However, when she kept moving forward and released her divine sense, she couldn't feel the slightest fluctuation of spiritual energy. She couldn't help but be surprised. Disappeared? Did you hide? Do you want to play hide-and-seek with this old woman? Her hoarse voice spread out in the night and drifted in all directions along with the night wind. Under her feet was the blood web that was intertwined with the surging blood, and it was the blood that was pushing her forward. Come out. This area has been covered with blood webs. You can't escape. At this moment, Fengjiu, who had restrained her aura, was hiding in a tree behind a dilapidated house. She panted on the tree and looked at the old woman, searching for her from afar. She saw that under the old woman's control, a huge blood web spread out from the ground in the dark and deserted town, causing the originally strange town to look even more terrifying. Ring, ring, ring. Suddenly, the clear sound of a bell rang in her ears. She looked down and saw that it was the bell on her waist that her sworn sister had given her. It was said that only she could hear the sound of the bell, and it would only ring when a ghost appeared. She reached out and lifted the bell on her waist to take a look. The sound went from weak to strong, from slow to fast. When the urgent sound rang in her ears, she stood on the tree and looked over. Within the net of blood, shadows began to condense from the blood. There were figures of various sizes, men and women, and some of them were struggling in the blood. Looking at this scene, she could almost imagine the miserable appearance of the entire town being drained of blood by the old woman. Regardless of whether it was the adults or the children, not a single one of them would be spared. Within the blood web, figures floated about and wailed. Their cries were like that of wolves and ghosts, causing one's heart to sink. Due to the release of the seal and the surging of the blood web, this place, which originally did not have a trace of Yin and ghost chi, had become like hell on earth. It was eerie and terrifying. Her hands involuntarily clenched into fists as anger welled up in her heart. So many ghosts, so many people. They had all died here. What do you mean all the villagers in this town have moved away? What did he mean by she was the only one left who couldn't bear to leave? They were all lies. Even if all the people in this town had moved away, they couldn't possibly have moved away so cleanly. Furthermore, they couldn't possibly have turned this town into a ghostly place. Also, how could someone who had never left this town have the oil sesame cake from Huang County? Did they really think that she was a 3-year-old child who could be fooled? Chapter 1351. How many lives were lost in a small town like this? How many people's blood had been used to create that eye-catching net of blood? The anger in her heart gave her the urge to fight. She wanted to destroy this old woman. However, she was also weighing her own strength. She was considering whether she had enough power to deal with a fairy realm powerhouse. Just as she was deep in thought, the old woman in the net of blood raised her walking stick made of human skulls into the sky. A ray of bloody light shot up into the sky, causing the entire sky to swirl. Fengjiu watched as the ray of bloody light shot up into the sky and formed a compass that spiraled above. A powerful airflow surged, and a wave of spiritual energy spread out from the sky, resonating with the blood net on the ground. When she saw this scene, she couldn't help but gasp and cry out in alarm. This is the inescapable net? As the saying goes, there is no escape from the inescapable net. Even she couldn't set up the inescapable net. However, this old woman had actually set up such an inescapable net. It looked like she was determined to capture her, the mysterious spiritual body. Back then, her master had told her that she couldn't let outsiders know about the mysterious spiritual body. Otherwise, she would be killed. She had always been careful to hide it. However, she didn't expect that this strange old woman would find out about it. Now, she was in such a desperate situation. She didn't have 100% confidence that she could defeat her opponent and leave this place alive. She had no one to call for help and nowhere to run. It was as if she had fallen into a desperate situation. She could only rely on herself. Since I can't avoid it, then let's fight, she murmured softly. Although she could hide in the space, it wasn't a wise move to do so under such circumstances. If she made a mistake, even the space would be exposed. Moreover, even if she hid in the space, she still couldn't leave this small town. After thinking about it again and again, the only thing she could do was to risk it all. However, how was she going to break the inescapable net? She furrowed her brows as she pondered. She looked at the bloody net and then at the inescapable net that was spinning in the sky. A powerful aura filled the air. If it wasn't for her ancient aura, it would be difficult for her to even walk in this place. The inescapable net is a trap. Since that's the case, I can only start with that old woman. She stared at the figure in the distance. At this moment, the old woman seemed to have noticed her and looked in her direction. Little girl, didn't I say that you wouldn't be able to escape? Come on, quick, let me have a good look. The old woman chuckled softly. Her hoarse and sharp voice rang through the air. Even though they were separated by a great distance, the voice seemed to echo in Fengjiu's ears. Since I can't escape, let's fight. Her clear and cold voice was filled with sharpness. She tapped the ground with the tip of her foot and leaped into the air. She no longer suppressed her might and aura and released it completely. As soon as the aura of a nascent soul stage powerhouse spread out, an intimidating ancient pressure also surged out from her body. As the two auras surged and merged, the aura that she exuded changed in an instant. Her aura and pressure were not inferior to the aura of a fairy realm powerhouse and the strong smell of blood on the old woman's body. Chapter 1352. Whoosh, whoosh. A powerful airflow whistled through the wind. The sharp sound was like a sharp blade, bringing with it a penetrating chill. In the next moment, a green light appeared in Fengjiu's hand. The azure-tipped sword, which was suffused with a cold light, slashed down from the sky with a biting cold sword aura. The aggressive slash had the power to destroy the heavens and earth. This was because she knew that when dealing with someone stronger than her, a battle of attrition was not advisable. Only by ending the battle quickly would she have a chance to win. Seeing the biting cold sword aura slashing down, the murderous aura was unable to be dodged. Thus, the old woman condensed her spiritual energy and poured it into the skull cane in her hand. Then, she faced the incoming sword aura. In an instant, the air flow from the old woman's skull cane swept up the blood on the ground and turned into a blood pillar that rushed up. Bang! Boom! A green light collided with the blood pillar. The blood pillar seemed to have dissolved the biting cold sword chi of the azure-edged sword and prevented the sword chi from attacking. However, after a rumbling sound, When the blood chi was smashed back to the ground, the green sword pierced through the blood chi like a hot knife through butter and attacked the old woman again with a speed that was too late to cover one's ears. Whoosh! Seeing the sudden attack of the sword aura, the old woman's expression changed. She hurriedly retreated, wanting to avoid it. Who knew that the green sword aura was so swift and fierce that it was already in front of her in the blink of an eye? She was shocked and quickly used the skull cane in her hand to block, but bang! The human-headed walking stick collided with the terrifying sword chi, and with a bang, it shattered into pieces and scattered all over the ground. Hiss! The green light flashed in front of the old woman's eyes, causing her to be unable to open them. She only felt a sharp pain in her arm and blood seeping out of her face. Ah! A shrill and hoarse scream rang out in the night. The voice was filled with unwillingness, resentment, and disbelief. The voice reached into the night sky and spread far, far away in the night. Ah! Granny Ghost's scream. So scary, so scary. When the vengeful spirits hiding in the dolls and scarecrows heard the mournful scream, they couldn't help but tremble and cry out in fear. Granny Ghost is going to die. Granny Ghost's resentment is very great. It's that big sister. I want to go take a look. One of the dolls jumped and excitedly jumped in the direction of the battle. The doll that was missing its left leg and right arm jumped on the blood net's grid and moved forward in the night sky. At the place where the battle took place, the old woman was holding her severed arm. She raised her head and looked at Feng Jiu's sword that was glowing with green light. She chuckled softly. Azure-tipped sword. Really good item. No wonder it was able to break through the blood pillar and cut through her blood chi. It was actually the ancient divine sword Qing Feng. The ancient sword, azure-tipped sword, had disappeared for many years. Even the people of the 8 great empires didn't know where it ended up. But now, it had appeared in the hands of a little girl. She covered her shoulder that was oozing blood. She was missing an arm. She closed her eyes and a strange and frightening smile appeared on her aged face. Her sharp and hoarse voice was eerily heard. Chapter 1353. Where's my hand? Where's my hand? The hoarse and strange voice rang out. Feng Jiu furrowed her brows. Sword chi gathered in her hand, and just as she was about to attack, she saw a scene that shocked her. She saw the old woman searching for her severed arm. When she saw her severed arm, she stretched out her hand and sucked the severed arm toward her. Just like that, she forcibly pushed it back to where her severed arm was connected. What was even stranger was that after the blood chi in her hand had melted into magma, Feng Jiu saw her severed arm rapidly regenerating at a speed visible to the naked eye. She even twisted her arm and shook her hand. Feng Jiu's worldview was completely refreshed. A severed arm could be reattached like that? Even a ghost doctor like her could not create such a strange method of reattachment. Just where did this old woman come from? How could her severed arm be reconstructed so quickly after the magma? Magma? Reconstruct? That's right. She knew it. This old woman could perform spirit refinement. Her furnace was inside her body. She could swallow a vengeful spirit and refine it. She could also use her own body to reconstruct her own body. When she thought of this, Feng Jiu's expression froze. She had originally wanted to attack, but at that moment, she stopped. If that was the case, even if she chopped off all 4 of her limbs, she could still use the strange furnace in her body to reconstruct them. Since that was the case, the only place she could attack was here. A clear voice rang out. Feng Jiu leapt into the air, sword in hand. However, at that moment, the old woman, who had long been prepared and knew that she was wielding the Qing Feng sword, flashed like a ghost just as Feng Jiu was about to attack. Here, the old woman's strange and hoarse voice suddenly rang out from behind. Feng Jiu was shocked. When she turned around to look, she saw the old woman's bloody palm strike fiercely towards her. Bang! The wind from the palm strike slammed into her body. In that instant, it was as if a giant palm had slammed into her. A powerful and oppressive aura slammed into her back. The bang was very clear in her ears. Pooh! Her body was sent flying by that blow, and she spat out a mouthful of blood. She lost her balance and fell down. That blow caused her to feel intense pain all over her body. It was as if the power of that palm had spread throughout her body, making it impossible for her to stabilize her falling body. Bang! Her body fell to the ground and into the blood web. At that moment, the struggling ghost in the blood web wanted to pounce on her, but it seemed to be afraid of the thing on her body and did not dare to approach. She crawled up from the blood web and used the green sword in her hand to support her body. With a wave of her hand, a bottle of pills appeared in her palm. She quickly poured out a pill and swallowed it. Her eyes darkened as she endured the discomfort in her body and secretly urged the green lotus in her body to heal her internal injuries. Not dead yet? Why aren't you dead? To think that you can still stand up after receiving my palm strike. Not simple at all. The old woman hovered in midair, her black robes fluttering in the night sky. She looked at the figure below with some surprise. For a nascent soul realm cultivator, it was almost impossible for him to stand up after receiving a blow from her, a fairy realm cultivator. However, she had done it. She could not help but have a whole new level of respect for her. Chapter 1354. It'll be easier for me to refine your body if you're dead. Since you didn't die from my palm strike, I'll give you another one. A gloomy voice came from the sky. The old woman looked at the figure standing in the blood web below her. Seeing that the ghosts around her were so afraid that they didn't dare to approach her, she knew that she had some kind of treasure on her that prevented the ghosts from getting close to her. Thus, before she could catch her breath, she condensed a ball of blood in the air with both her hands. The ball of blood surged with fresh blood and let out a sharp, angry howl. The entire night sky was covered in dark clouds, and her aura seemed to be controlled by her. It froze in midair and was then injected into the ball of blood. Upon seeing this, Fengjiu's heart sank. She had a bad feeling about this. Her opponent was too strong. With her nascent soul strength, it was already not bad that she could exchange blows with her. Now that she was seriously injured, how could she withstand another fatal blow? She saw that the ball of blood surged with an intense blood-red light that lit up half the night sky. The aura of death emanated from the ball of blood and enveloped the entire town. She couldn't help but gasp. Was this the strength of a fairy realm powerhouse? She was so strong that she couldn't believe it. Right at this moment, the ball of blood shot out from the old woman's hand, and it assaulted her with an aura of obliteration. She immediately turned around and fled, and she used all her strength with the intention of avoiding that attack, because she knew that she would probably lose her life if she was struck by that attack. However, she still underestimated the speed of a fairy realm powerhouse. Even though she tried to dodge the attack as fast as she could, she was still not faster than the fairy realm powerhouse's fatal attack. Whoosh! Whoosh! A strong airflow came from behind her, stirring up the blood aura on the ground. She didn't need to turn around to feel the powerful blood aura that was roaring like a blood beast. The aura of death was gradually approaching her, and it was as if a mountain was pressing down on her from above. Bang! Ah! A powerful collision sound was heard, followed by Fengjiu's scream. Then, several rays of light suddenly shot out from her body. Bang! She flew dozens of meters away and fell to the ground like a broken rag doll. She couldn't move at all. She lay on her back on the ground, blood flowing from the corner of her mouth. All the bones in her body seemed to have been broken, and she couldn't muster any strength. Crack! Crack! Several cracking sounds came from her body. Hearing those sounds, she moved her fingers and tried to stand up again because the old woman's fatal attack seemed to have been blocked by some treasure on her body. Otherwise, she wouldn't just be lying there with broken bones and unable to move. She would have died in one blow. However, just as she moved her finger, the black figure came to her side and stared at her as if he was staring at something strange. He's not dead yet. The old woman's gaze swept around strangely and landed on the broken things beside her. Her eyes suddenly lit up. So it was these things that saved your life. Little girl, your life is really tough. You didn't die 3 or 4 times. Unfortunately, when I, Ghost Granny, want people dead, no one has ever been able to leave alive from my hands. Seeing the murderous intent in the old woman's eyes and hearing her sinister voice, the immobile Fengjiu experienced for the first time the helplessness and unwillingness before death. Chapter 1355. She could not accept this. The life-saving treasure that they had given her could help her block a fatal attack, but facing this old woman who was determined to kill her, no amount of treasure would be enough. In this strange town where there was no one around, who could save her? Who could come and save her? Strength. She still needed strength. If she had been a little stronger, if she had been a fairy realm expert, then she would not have lost so miserably at the hands of this old woman. If I break your neck, I'll damage your body. It's too ugly, too ugly. The old woman gestured with her hands, as if she was thinking about how best to kill her. However, when she saw that Fengjiu, who was lying on the ground, was not frightened at all, she could not help but laugh sinisterly. Little girl, you're about to die. Aren't you afraid? Afraid? If I'm afraid, won't you kill me? Fengjiu's weak voice rang out, as if it was very difficult for her to speak. Hearing her reply, the old woman seemed to be very happy, as if she was enjoying the fear and terror of her prey before she died. She chuckled, and at the same time, her hoarse and aged voice rang out. She shook her head. No, I want to kill you, I want to kill you. Look at you, such a perfect piece of equipment. As long as I refine it, it'll definitely be even more perfect, and it'll even belong to me, ha. No, I don't want to die. I don't want to die yet. Fengjiu's voice was filled with panic and fear. She looked at the old woman, who was laughing hysterically. Suddenly, her expression changed, and she slapped the ground with one hand, instantly leaping up. The moment she leaped up, the Qingfeng sword in her other hand fiercely stabbed towards the old woman's dantian. Whoosh! The Qingfeng sword pierced the old woman's body with a whoosh, and the Qingfeng sword went straight through, causing the old woman's hunched back to bend even more. Her eyes were wide open, and she looked in shock and disbelief at Fengjiu, who was standing in front of her and holding the Qingfeng sword that had pierced through her body. Her old and hoarse voice sharply questioned, "How can you still stand up? How can you still have the strength to stand up?" Hearing the sharp voice, Fengjiu's heart sank. She stared at the place where the Qingfeng sword had pierced. That was where the dantian was located. She had used the last bit of spiritual energy in her body to launch a sneak attack. She had used up the last bit of spiritual energy in her body to kill her while she was unprepared. The Qingfeng sword pierced through the old woman, but the old woman's spiritual energy and blood energy, not a single bit. Why? Could it be that her dantian... You're wondering? Wondering why I'm not dying? I'm the one who's wondering why a little girl like you hasn't died yet. Why do you still have the strength? She clenched her fists and raised her head to shout. Blood chi surged out of her body. The powerful blood chi sent Fengjiu flying. The Qingfeng sword in her body was also pulled out as Fengjiu was sent flying. Chapter 1356. The old woman walked forward step by step. With every step she took, the surrounding blood chi surged, and a crazy murderous intent filled her body. Because she had been stabbed, blood was still dripping from her wound, and the intense pain from her wound made her entire face contort into a hideous expression. She was not immortal, but she had a rare treasure in her body. However, this little girl had actually wanted to destroy her dantian and take her life. Ha! How could she know that her rare treasure was protecting her dantian and the nascent soul within it? She was a mighty fairy, so how could a little girl like her kill her? However, her actions had angered her, and the pain from her wound made her heart surge with a crazy, murderous intent. She walked forward and looked at Fengjiu, who was on the verge of death. Unable to suppress her anger, she raised her hand and gathered blood chi, condensing it into a fierce palm wind. Granny Ghost killed someone again. Granny Ghost killed that big sister. How terrifying, how terrifying. A vengeful spirit hiding in the distance cried out, then quickly turned around and fled. The old woman glanced at the vengeful spirit, then snorted and looked away. Her gaze fell on the unconscious person on the ground. Since she wanted to destroy her dantian and kill her, she would send her on her way. Once her dantian was shattered and her nascent soul died, she would see how she could survive. "Go to hell," said a hoarse and sharp voice. She slammed her palm down, but at that moment, a beam of cyan light shot out from Fengjiu's body. The cyan light was dazzling, pure, and powerful. In an instant, it sent the old woman who had slammed her palm flying. The old woman was not prepared for this and was sent flying. When she fell to the ground, a trace of blood spilled from her mouth. She looked in shock at the motionless figure lying on the ground, and her heart was filled with shock. "What's going on?" As the hoarse and sharp voice spoke, another green light shot out from the unconscious little girl's dantian. This time, a fist-sized green lotus flower accompanied the green light. The green lotus flower flew out and attacked the old woman with a whoosh. When the old woman saw this, she cried out in shock, "Purifying? Purifying green lotus? No, it's the chaotic green lotus. Whoosh! Don't come over! Don't come over!" Amidst her shock, she gathered blood chi with both hands in an attempt to block it. However, the blood chi and the surrounding ghosts instantly dissipated into the air when they came into contact with the green lotus. She watched as the green lotus flew over and crashed in her body at a speed too fast for her ears. She could only scream as her aura was devoured and purified. Her body disappeared inch by inch, as if it had turned into ashes and dissipated in the air with the wind. All that was left was her panicked screams that echoed in the dark night with unwillingness. Why, clang. A small gray cauldron fell out of the burnt old woman's body and was brought to Fengjiu's side by the green lotus. Then, a green lotus petal fell from the green lotus. When the petal fell to the ground, it turned into countless green light spots, purifying the bloody ground bit by bit. Chapter 1357. Early in the morning, when the first ray of sunlight shone on the earth, the warm sunlight caused Fengjiu's fingers to twitch slightly. Her divine sense gradually awakened, and when she recalled the scene before she fainted, she abruptly opened her eyes and leaped up. She exclaimed in surprise. After she leaped up, she noticed the injuries on her body. Even her broken bones had been repaired. There was not a single wound on her entire body. That's strange. Why are my injuries all healed? She was a little astonished. She looked around her, but the old woman's figure was already nowhere to be seen. Beside her, a small dusty cauldron was quietly lying there. She picked it up and was slightly startled. This is the ancient divine cauldron, the Shen-Nong cauldron? Even though the cauldron was covered in dust, she could still make out the small words on the cauldron. She stood up, patted her clothes, and glanced at the surroundings. Not only was the old woman gone, even the blood energy in the surroundings had vanished without a trace. It was even to the extent that she couldn't detect any blood energy in this area, even after searching over and over again. Although she was a little confused, she did not think too much about it. Because she was alive, that was already the best. She put away the emerald-edged sword, thinking of leaving this place. However, her footsteps paused. She looked at the small cauldron in her hand, then looked in the direction of the ancestral hall. Thus, she walked over there. Her divine sense followed her as she walked, all the way to the ancestral hall. When she entered, she sized it up, then walked to the back. When she reached the back, she could not help but be slightly startled. She saw that there were more than 10 corpses piled up in the open backyard. The dead people were all dressed in black, dressed as guards. From the degree of rigidity of their corpses, they should have died the day before she arrived here. However, other than these corpses dressed as guards, she did not see the corpses of the people these guards were protecting. Her gaze swept around and landed on a large vat in the corner. It was a large water vat with a lid on top. What made her notice was that she seemed to feel a trace of sealing power. Thus, she stepped forward and released a wisp of spiritual energy from her hand. While unlocking the seal, she also used the force to push open the lid. There was no movement inside, so she walked forward to take a look. She saw a young man in brocade clothes, about 17 or 18 years old. His face was pale, and he was unconscious. His breathing was weak, as if he would die at any moment. She didn't expect that there would be a living person hidden inside. She was slightly surprised and flicked a stream of air between her fingers. With a clang and a cracking sound, the large vat cracked and shattered into pieces on the ground. The person inside also tumbled out. She dragged the young man to the side and checked his pulse. Then, she took out a pill and stuffed it into his mouth. She muttered, "You're lucky to have met me. Otherwise, you would have really died here." After feeding the youth the pill, she gave him some water before sitting down to wait for him to wake up. She couldn't help but have a whole new level of respect for this young man. Chapter 1358. She took out a fruit from her space and ate it as she stared at the boy. From time to time, she would raise her head to look at the sky. It wasn't until around 7 in the morning that the boy on the ground slowly woke up. Don't kill me, don't kill me." As soon as the boy woke up, he cried out in alarm. He rolled and crawled to the side, his pale face unable to hide the horror and fear. "Who killed you?" Fengjiu yawned and asked. "Since you're awake, I'm leaving." She didn't want to stay in this damned place any longer. At this time, the boy saw that the person sitting in front of him was a little beggar in tattered clothes. Looking at the little beggar with messy hair and a face covered in dust, he couldn't help but sigh softly. He looked around and saw that his guards were all dead. His eyes couldn't help but redden. "Where's that old witch? Is she still here?" Thinking of the previous scene, his heart trembled, and even his teeth trembled in disbelief. "I didn't see her. I just passed by here and saw that the guards are all dead. I opened the water tank and saw that you were alive, so I saved you." Fengjiu patted her clothes and stretched. "I'm leaving. There's nothing to eat in this place, and there's not even a shadow of a person." As she spoke, she walked out. "Don't you wait for me." The boy was shocked and quickly followed. Fengjiu didn't stop. It wasn't until she was out of the town that she secretly breathed a sigh of relief. She glanced back and sighed in her heart. "I almost lost my life here. Little beggar, thank you for saving me." The boy jogged to Fengjiu's side and said. Fengjiu walked forward and said, "I'm not interested in verbal thanks. If you want to thank me, do something practical. Then take me home. When we get home, I'll have someone to thank you. I can also treat you to a good meal." He thought that this little beggar looked thin and small, so he usually didn't eat enough. Fengjiu glanced at him and asked, "Where's your home?" If it was on the way, then it was on the way. If it wasn't, then she couldn't be bothered. "It's the Danyang city near the Danyang sect." The boy said, "Danyang? Okay then, I'll take you with me. But remember to thank me with a lot of money." It was on the way anyway. Hearing this, the boy was happy and hurriedly said, "Don't worry. As long as you take me home, I'll have my family to give you 10,000 gold coins." "All right, I'm Zhu Yu, little beggar. What's your name?" "Just call him little beggar," Fengjiu said casually. "Little beggar, what's your cultivation? Why can't I see through it?" He was a golden core cultivator, but he couldn't see through this little beggar's cultivation. Moreover, this little beggar didn't look like an ordinary beggar. Instead, he looked more like a rogue cultivator. This was one of the reasons why he wanted this little beggar to take him home. After all, this way, he would have someone to protect him. Fengjiu didn't even respond to him. Instead, she turned around and saw an ox cart coming from behind. Her eyes couldn't help but brighten. This time, she didn't have to walk and could take a rest. She quickly walked to the middle of the road and stretched out her hand to stop the cart. "Old uncle, take us for a ride." Chapter 1359. "Thank you, old uncle." She smiled and thanked him. Then, she jumped onto the carriage and sat on the tall pile of straw in the carriage. "Give me a hand, give me a hand." Zhu Yu stepped forward. Ever since he was trapped in the water tank, he was on the verge of death. But strangely, After he woke up, he felt that there was an energy supporting his body. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to walk so far. It was just that he didn't know what that energy was. Seeing that he couldn't climb up from the side of the carriage, Feng Jiu reached out and pulled him up. Oh, Zhu Yu, who had fallen onto the pile of straw, directly lay down. I'm so tired. Sit tight. The old man who was driving the ox cart shouted. Only then did he continue to drive the ox cart forward. Little beggar, are you also going to Danyang City? Zhu Yu lay on his back and looked at the blue sky and white clouds in the sky. Yes. Feng Jiu sat cross-legged with one hand supporting her chin and narrowed her eyes. Why are you going to Danyang City? Zhu Yu continued to ask. Feng Jiu seemed to have fallen asleep and didn't pay attention to him. In the evening, when they reached the city gate, the old man stopped the carriage and said to the two, We're in the city. You can come down. Feng Jiu jumped down. After resting, Zhu Yu's strength gradually recovered. He slid down from the carriage and patted the straw on his body before walking into the city. I want to eat a good meal. I'm starving. Feng Jiu walked to the front of the ox cart and smiled at the old man. Thank you, uncle. This is the fee for our ride on the ox cart. It's just a small token of appreciation. As she spoke, she handed a small purse to the old man and then turned to leave. There's no need. As the old man spoke, he saw that the little beggar had already walked far away. He couldn't help but hold the money bag in a daze. When he opened it and took a look, he was even more shocked. He looked left and right and saw that no one was looking. Then he quickly put it into his clothes. In the city, although it was evening, there were many people and hawkers walking on the streets. The bustling scene made people feel at ease, especially for the two who had just walked on the brink of death. Seeing the bustling scene in the city, they felt a lot more at ease. Little beggar, there's a restaurant in front. Let's go there to eat. Zhu Yu turned around and said to Feng Jiu, who was walking slowly behind him. You have money? Feng Jiu sized him up and asked. Yes, don't worry. Although it's not much, it's enough for us to eat and drink until we reach Danyang City. He patted his chest as he spoke. Then he frowned bitterly. My body is weak. I need to nourish myself. Let's go. Then we'll find an inn to rest tonight. Tomorrow, we'll buy a carriage and take it back. He had thought it through. Taking a carriage back wouldn't exhaust his physical strength. Moreover, he could use the time to nurse his body back. This was because he saw that the little beggar clearly knew how to ride a sword, but he would rather walk. He knew that the little beggar wouldn't take him back. Hearing him say this, Feng Jiu didn't say anything else. He nodded and walked with him to the restaurant in front. However, Zhu, who walked quickly in front, went in, but she was blocked outside. Where did this beggar come from? Go away, go away. The waiter covered his nose and said with a look of disgust. He waved his hand and shooed Feng Jiu away. Chapter 1360. Thus, she took a few steps back and saw a small food stall at the side of the restaurant. A middle-aged woman was busy there, so she walked over and asked with a smile, Auntie, can you give me some water? The middle-aged woman looked at her and pointed to the side. There's a bucket at the back. The water inside is clean. Okay, she replied with a smile and walked to the back. The restaurant's waiter stood at the door and glanced at her. He snorted and was about to go in when he saw the little beggar take off his tattered beggar clothes, revealing a green robe underneath. Although it wasn't a luxurious robe, it was clean and tidy. Especially when the little beggar washed his face, his original appearance was revealed from the originally dusty face. That handsome appearance and a pair of crafty eyes and high spirits made the waiter stunned. These days, there really were all kinds of people. This was clearly an elegant young master, but he had to dress up as a little beggar. What a strange person. Thinking about how he had just chased him away, he couldn't help but shrink his neck. Just as he was about to sneak in, he was patted on the shoulder by a pair of hands. Waiter, is that my friend? He couldn't wait for the little beggar inside, so he came out to look for him, who knew that after looking around upstairs and downstairs, he still couldn't find the little beggar, so he went downstairs to ask. What friend? The waiter asked in a daze. The little beggar who followed behind me. I went upstairs and didn't see him come in. Did you chase him away? Zhu Yu asked and his eyes glared. Especially after seeing the waiter's guilty expression, he was even more certain. You really chased him away? No, no, the waiter said with cold sweat. No, if you didn't chase him away, why didn't he come in? What kind of restaurant is this? You have the habit of chasing away customers? Where's the shopkeeper? Call him out. He shouted angrily. Young master, please calm down, calm down. The shopkeeper walked out and said with a smile. Calm down? You, a waiter, chased my friend away. How do you expect me to calm down? Zhu Yu raised his voice and glared at the shopkeeper with a pair of eyes filled with anger. This. The shopkeeper hesitated for a moment before shouting at the waiter beside him. Hurry up and apologize to this young master. Forget it. I won't accept a verbal apology. He was learning from the little beggar. Hearing this, the manager was startled. After thinking for a while, he said, Then I'll give you our restaurant's signature suckling pig as an apology. Young master is magnanimous. Please don't be calculative. When Zhu Yu heard this, he didn't say anything. He grabbed the waiter's collar and asked, Where's my friend? Where did you go? This young master is over there. The waiter pointed at the person washing his face behind the stall. Zhu Yu looked over and saw a handsome young man dressed in green. He immediately kicked the waiter and said, My friend is a little beggar. The waiter had a long face and hurriedly said, It's him. It's really him. He took off the beggar's clothes he was wearing outside and washed his face. I saw it from here. It's true. I'm not lying. Hearing this, Zhu Yu was stunned. He stared at the young man in green again, and the corner of his mouth couldn't help but twitch. Chapter 1361. Zhu Yu, what are you doing standing there? Come over here to eat. This stall also has a lot of delicious food. Feng Jiu walked out from behind the stall and sat down at the small table. She smiled at the middle-aged woman and said, Auntie, give me a portion of everything. The middle-aged woman saw that the little beggar seemed like a different person after washing his face and changing his clothes. She couldn't help but stare blankly for a moment. She then smiled and said, Okay, then drink a cup of tea first. She then busied herself and gave him a portion of everything on the stall. When Zhu Yu saw this, he was about to step out when his footsteps suddenly stopped. He turned around and said to the shopkeeper, You said you would give me a roasted suckling pig. You must keep your word. Send it to the stall over there. As he spoke, he quickly walked towards the stall. The shopkeeper was helpless and could only order people to prepare a roasted suckling pig. However, just as he turned around, he heard a loud bang behind him and a muffled groan. He quickly turned around to look. He saw the young master in embroidered clothes fall to the ground. Because he fell down the stairs, his forehead directly hit the ground. A trace of blood flowed out and dyed the front of the restaurant red. Zhu Yu, Feng Jiu didn't expect that Zhu Yu would fall and bleed after just drinking a mouthful of tea. She quickly walked towards him and wanted to help him up. Who knew? Get out of the way. Feng Jiu frowned and looked at the 4 guards in front of her. Zhu Yu, what a coincidence. A man in embroidered clothes walked forward and looked at the bleeding Zhu Yu. He smiled proudly and arrogantly. How can you be so careless? How can you fall when you're just walking? Zhu Yu sat up from the ground and covered his bleeding forehead with one hand. He felt the world spinning in front of him. The injury on his forehead made him, who was already weak, unable to recover for a while. He only heard a familiar voice coming from above him. Liao, it's you. He raised his head and saw that the person standing in front of him was actually his sworn enemy, Li Yao. For a moment, his face turned ugly. I haven't seen you for so long, but you're still so small. How'd he fall down? He was clearly walking towards the stall when a gust of wind hit him, causing him to lose his balance and fall forward. Otherwise, no matter how weak his body was, it was impossible for him to walk until he fell. He stood up from the ground, but at that moment, Li Yao raised his foot and kicked him back to the ground. Yes. Zhu Yu groaned and fell back to the ground. He glared at the person standing in front of him and his guards. What do you want? Nothing much, but don't you always bring guard with you when you go out? This time, there was only that little beggar with black hair following him. TSK, Zhu Yu, you finally managed to fall into my hands. Tell me, how about I let you crawl under my crotch? Or should I beat you up? Fengjiu, who was blocked, glanced at the 4 guards in front of her. When she heard the brocade-robed man's words, her finger moved slightly, and a silver needle silently shot out. Ah! Suddenly, Li Yao screamed and fell to the ground without any warning. He rolled and convulsed on the ground, foaming at the mouth. He looked like he was about to die, scaring the surrounding people. Is he having epilepsy? It seems so. The surrounding people whispered. When the guard saw this, they didn't bother with Zhu Yu and quickly carried Li Yao to the medical center. Chapter 1362. Get up. What are you still standing there for? Fengjiu came forward and looked at him. Seeing that his forehead was bleeding, she couldn't help but frown. She helped him up. I'll help you bandage it. Then, she led him to the stall. The crowd watching the show dispersed as those people left. Some people who originally thought there would be a good show to watch saw that the brocade-clothed youth had broken his head and the other was like a beggar, so they didn't take the two seriously. At the stall, Fengjiu simply applied medicine and bandaged his wound. Then, she said, if you can't beat them, then hide. Fortunately, it's only a small wound. If it's deep, then it'll be troublesome. It's all their fault. Otherwise, how could I have fallen? Zhu Yu said, somewhat angrily. When I go back, I must tell my father about this. Fengjiu rolled her eyes and poured a cup of tea to drink. Watching the stall's Annie put food on the table, her eyes couldn't help but brighten. I knew these snacks would taste good. As she spoke, she had already started to eat. Meanwhile, in the restaurant over there, the manager hesitated for a moment before ordering the waiter to send them a roast suckling pig. Smelling the fragrant aroma, the two of them couldn't help but swallow their saliva. They picked it up with their chopsticks and took big bites. After eating at the stall, the two found an inn to take a bath and rest. In the guest room, Fengjiu sat cross-legged to adjust her qi. After cultivating for a while, she took out the flower-like original spirit from space. Chirp! When the little thing saw her, it affectionately stuck to her palm, letting her knead and pinch it. It still blinked a pair of clear eyes and stared at her. Spirit refinement? She thought for a while, took the original spirit back into the space, and then laid down on the bed. Spirit refinement. She had only heard of it from the old woman. She had never heard of it anywhere else. How exactly did spirit refinement do it? She closed her eyes and pondered. When her divine sense touched the green lotus seed in her dantian, she couldn't help but be startled. Originally, she didn't pay attention, but now that she looked at it, why did it seem that the life aura had weakened a lot? Even the light had dimmed a little. Just as she was deep in thought, she suddenly heard a sound coming from the roof. She tilted her head slightly to listen. It was the sound of footsteps. Although they were very light, with her nascent soul cultivation, she could still hear them. But she did not mind the noise as it passed over her roof and went off in another direction. In this world, it would be strange if there was peace. As for things that had nothing to do with her, it was better for her to stay out of it. As she thought this, she continued to sleep. However, when she heard a cry of surprise, she frowned, jumped up, and headed outside. Ah, little beggar, save me. It was Zhu Yu's voice. Perhaps because he had eaten and slept well, his voice sounded louder and more energetic. However, his current situation was not very good. He was being carried out by 2 black-clothed men and was about to step onto the roof and leave. Don't catch me. You sure have a lot of troubles. Fengjiu's voice appeared in the night. Looking at Zhu Yu, who was being held by 2 men in black, he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Sure enough, one can't be a good person casually. This is just too troublesome. And looking at the people in front of her, weren't they the group of people from the evening? Thus, she asked, why did you come again? Is it another order from your family's young master? Chapter 1363. What? Fengjiu was dumbfounded. Even Zhu Yu was dumbfounded. What was going on? You're still pretending. You didn't plot against him with those silver needles? The black-clothed guard glared at Fengjiu. We brought young master to the clinic, but the people there pulled out a silver needle from young master's body. Although young master recovered, He was detained by them. Don't you need to snatch him back? Aren't you very skilled at this? Feng Jiu raised his eyebrows and glanced at them mockingly. If they had the time to kidnap people, why didn't they think of bringing their master out? It was really strange. What did being detained have to do with her? She didn't ask anyone to detain him. Hearing this, the guards were embarrassed. You don't have to laugh at us. If it weren't for the fact that we can't beat them, we wouldn't have to listen to them and take you away. Hearing this, Feng Jiu was a little surprised. Why are you taking us there? Replacement? This was even more inexplicable. She had nothing to do with that medical center. That's right. They said that as long as we bring the person who used the needles to them, they would let young master go. Today, he had a conflict with you. If it wasn't you who plotted against him, who else could it be? He thought for a long time before coming to a conclusion. It must be these two people. Zhu Yu was in the same city as them. They knew a little about his abilities, but they didn't hear that he knew anything about silver needles. Then it could only be this brat who came out of nowhere. Feng Jiu's expression froze. He glanced at the black-clothed guards in front. They were all golden core cultivators. How could they say that they couldn't beat someone from a clinic? Are you going to leave by yourself? Or do you want us to do it? The black-clothed guard asked. It seemed that he was determined to bring them to the clinic. I'll go by myself. Let him go. I'll go with you. She glanced at Zhu Yu and said, That won't do. I'll go with you. Zhu Yu said as he stared at the figure in front of him. It was all because of him that the little beggar got into trouble. How could he be so disloyal and only let the little beggar go with these people? If something were to happen to him, for a moment, countless thoughts flashed through his mind. If he was taken by them, would he be killed? Was that clinic a black clinic? Otherwise, why would they detain him and not let him go? Why did they want him to go there? Would he be able to come back alive? The more he thought about it, the paler his face became. Although he was shocked, looking at the little beggar in front of him who was not frightened and calm, his heart calmed down a bit. He was blessed with good fortune, so he shouldn't die so easily. Thus, Feng Jiu and Zhu Yu followed the black-clothed guards to a medical hall located among the shops on the main street. There was a wooden sign hanging in front of the medical hall with the word medicine written on it. Above it was the name of the medical hall, Rejuvenation Hall. It was still midnight. Although the door was closed, the lights in the clinic were still on. Just as Feng Jiu was thinking to herself, one of the guards beside her stepped forward and knocked on the door. We've brought him here. Let the person who gave him the needles come in. An old voice came from inside. When that voice came out, the black-robed guards outside trembled imperceptibly. Go in. The guard retreated and opened the door for Feng Jiu to enter. Chapter 1364. She saw the medicine cabinets in the medicine shop and an old man dozing off in front of them. The old man had white hair and looked inconspicuous. He nodded his head from time to time, as if he had been waiting for a long time. Moreover, there seemed to be a smell mixed in with the smell of the herbs. She glanced at the old man and looked away. Even if the people inside did not come out, she could feel that there were a few extraordinary auras hidden inside. A small medicine shop actually had such power. Moreover, they detained the people who came to see the doctor and ordered someone to find her. It was obvious that there was a powerful force behind this medicine shop. But why did they want her here? You're here. The dozing old man yawned and stood up. At the same time, he looked at Feng Jiu and sized him up quietly. Senior, why did you invite me here? She asked. The old man in charge was a nascent soul cultivator, and his strength was not bad. I would like to ask you for a favor. After sizing her up, the old man said directly and walked out with his hands behind his back. Little brother, you must have excellent medical skills and have great attainments in medicine. I only know a little and can't be considered a master. Ha ha. Little brother, you're too modest. The old man smiled and said, This old man will not beat around the bush. When I saw the young master who came to seek medical treatment in the evening, this old man was very surprised, so I asked someone to invite little brother over to see me. Hearing that, Feng Jiu smiled and said, I just want to know why you invited me here to give it a try again and again. Ha! I knew I couldn't hide it from little brother's eyes. This makes me even more certain that little brother has great attainments in medicine. The old man stroked his beard and smiled. It's because I have an old friend, huh? Fengjiu chuckled and looked at the old man. If it's about treatment, you don't have to say anything. While I'm in a bad mood, I usually don't treat people. You're also a doctor and should know that a doctor's mood is extremely important. Otherwise, if there's any deviation in the treatment, it's hard to say what the consequences will be. Hearing this, the old man's face stiffened and he couldn't smile anymore. He looked at the young man standing there and saw him walk to a chair and sit down. He couldn't help but pause and think for a moment. Then, he stepped forward and said, "Little brother, I know it's rude to invite you here in this way. I'll apologize to you first." As he spoke, he cupped his hands and bowed to him without hesitation. After all, no one would bow to him, an old man, to apologize to a young man. But he did so to apologize to Fengjiu. Thinking that they didn't cause any real harm to her and were at most a little rude, she calmed down and said, "Do you have a place to rest here?" "I'm tired. Let's talk tomorrow." Chapter 1365. Hearing this, Fengjiu did not say anything else. She stood up and yawned. Seeing this, the old man laughed softly, "Little brother, please." As he spoke, he led Fengjiu to the back. When they reached the back, Fengjiu realized that there was something special about this place. In front of them was the medical hall, and behind them was a small courtyard. However, after passing through the courtyard, they were connected to another wall. Especially when they stepped into the courtyard behind the wall, the feeling was different from the one in front. If the medical hall in front had a few auras secretly watching them, then in this courtyard, there were no less than 10 auras hiding in the shadows. Furthermore, one of them should be the aura of a strong fairy. Feeling the power of this place, she had a thought. What kind of place was this Huichun Hall? Who were the people in this courtyard? With such power, how could they not find a highly skilled doctor? "Little brother, I'll have to trouble you to rest here tonight." As the old man spoke, he led Fengjiu to one of the rooms and said meaningfully, "I hope that you can have a good rest tonight and adjust your mood and energy. I'll come and find you tomorrow morning." Fengjiu looked at the old man who left after saying these words. Her eyes moved slightly. She walked into the room and lay on the bed, but she did not feel sleepy. On one hand, she was worried about Juyu because she had not seen him since she came in. On the other hand, she wondered who the old friend that the old man had mentioned was. She could tell that this person's identity was not simple. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to have so many experts guarding him. Moreover, if he really needed the help of a doctor with the strength of these people, it should not be difficult for them to do so. She did not fall asleep even when the sky was bright. Hence, when the sun rose, she got out of bed and washed up. When she walked out of the room, she saw the old man walking in. Behind him was a young boy who was carrying breakfast. "Little brother, you're up? I just asked someone to send you breakfast." The old man gestured to the young boy behind him to put the food on the table and then left. "I tested little brother with medicine yesterday. Although little brother didn't feel any discomfort, I still asked someone to make a medicinal diet to nourish little brother's body. Little brother, do you want to try it?" Seeing this, Fengjiu nodded and walked forward. Medicinal cuisine was not something that an ordinary doctor would know how to cook. In addition, she could not resist the temptation of food. No matter what, she had to try it first. She sat down and opened it. It was a bowl of porridge made by adding nourishing ingredients to the black-boned chicken. A faint medicinal fragrance accompanied by the fragrance of the black-boned chicken wafted into her nose, especially the smell of angelica in it, which was even more appetizing. She couldn't help but smile and eat without any reservation. Delicious food always brought joy to people. After finishing the small pot of porridge, she put down the bowl in satisfaction. When she raised her head, she saw the old man looking at her in a daze, as if he didn't expect her to finish the small pot of porridge by herself. "Hee hee, little brother, you have a good appetite. It's good to be young." He smiled ruefully. Only young people could eat so much. If it were him, no matter how good the taste was, no matter how appetizing the food was, he would not be able to finish so much. Feng Jiu wiped the corners of her mouth and stood up. How can I help? Say it. Chapter 1366. Looking at the two men in black standing guard outside, Feng Jiu calmly retracted her gaze. After the old man knocked on the door, one of the people inside opened the door and let them in. The moment they entered, the first thing they smelled was the stench of blood, and a rotting smell mixed in with the smell of blood. The pungent smell made her frown slightly. She took out a self-made mask from her sleeve and put it on. When the old man saw this, he did not say much. However, the others were not happy when they saw this and thought that he was disdainful. When they came to the bed inside, they saw the masked man lying on the bed. His lower body was only covered with a thin piece of cloth. His entire body was stripped clean. Only the mask on his face prevented others from seeing his face. Feng Jiu glanced at him and calmly looked away. The corners of her mouth twitched slightly. Although she was a doctor and had seen many naked people, those she had seen in the past were definitely dead. However, among the naked bodies of living men, she had only seen the body of Uncle Xianyuan Mo's. Right now, there was one lying here. Although he was half dead, he was still alive, wasn't he? She simply didn't know where to look. Little brother, look, this is the wound. As the old man spoke, he gestured for Feng Jiu to look at the wound next to the man's heart. The wound was not big, but had begun to fester and worsen. The area around the wound had turned black and turned purple, forming a purplish-black and red color. The patient has been unconscious for a day. I have checked the wound. I'm afraid that we have to operate on him. However, the wound is near the heart. I'm not confident that I can operate on him because it is too dangerous for me to operate on him alone. Therefore, I hope that you can use your acupuncture technique to seal the surrounding acupuncture points and prevent the bleeding from stopping during the operation. Feng Jiu nodded. With such a wound, it would be strange if he was not unconscious. Moreover, the wound was near the heart. It was not easy to operate on him there. If he was not careful, he would lose his life here. Therefore, she looked at the wound and checked the person's pulse. She said, the aura in the body is chaotic and there are toxins acting up. The wound has worsened and there should be some residue inside. If it is not treated before sunset, the person will definitely die. She told him the results of her diagnosis. However, as soon as she finished speaking, she felt that the air in the room had dropped a few notches. Even the atmosphere seemed a little stifling. Even the old man's heart was heavy. I know we don't have much time left. Little brother, get ready to be my assistant. Help me from the side. At this moment, the old man did not think that Feng Jiu's medical skills were better than his. What he thought was that his acupuncture technique was wonderful. If he used it to treat the old man, he might be able to reduce the risk of death. That was why he asked someone to find Feng Jiu. The old man, who was already nervous, felt his heart sink even more after hearing Feng Ix's words. Sweat began to form on his forehead. That's right. If he delayed any longer, he would definitely die. While they were busy washing their hands and preparing the tools, Feng Jiu just stood to the side and watched after washing his hands. He watched as two guards came over. Under the old man's orders, they carried the person on the bed to a treatment bed. Chapter 1367. At the same time, Feng Jiu silently averted her gaze. She thought, don't look at indecent things. She had no interest in looking at the naked body of a stranger. In her opinion, none of them could compare to Xianyuan Mo's sexy and firm figure. When she thought of a certain person, she could not help but think of some indecent images, so much so that she fell into a trance for a moment, until the old man's voice sounded. Little brother, come over quickly. What are you still standing there for? Oh, I'm coming. Feng Jiu came back to her senses and hurriedly walked out of the room. She saw that the masked man had covered himself with that piece of cloth again and was lying there. She walked up to the old man's side and asked, Are we starting? Yes, we can't wait any longer. Come, let me tell you. As the old man spoke, he told Feng Jiu when to insert the needle, how to insert the needle, and what to do in case of an accident. Before he finished, the old man added, There can't be a single mistake during the insertion of the needle. If there's a mistake and his life is lost because of it, even I can't save you. Yes, I know. I'll be careful. She nodded in response. She saw that the old man's forehead was already covered in cold sweat even before he started. He seemed to be nervous, and even his hands were trembling slightly. She could not help but be startled and asked, "Senior, are you all right? Could he operate like this?" This was a treatment operation that was close to the heart. The slightest mistake could cost a life. Could he operate with such a trembling appearance? "I'm just a little nervous," the old man said truthfully. He wiped his sweat and said to a person beside him, "Go and pour me a cup of hot tea. I'll drink it to calm myself down." The person beside him acknowledged and left. The old man also sat down beside him. He looked at the person lying in front of him with a trace of worry in his eyes. At this moment, an old man walked out from the shadows. He frowned slightly and stared at the old man whose forehead was covered in sweat. He asked in a serious voice, "Are you not confident? Can the young master wake up if you operate like this?" "I can't guarantee that I can save him if I use the knife, but if I don't, he won't live past today." The old man sighed and said, "The heat poison is already attacking his heart. If he doesn't stop it now, he will definitely die." Hearing this, the old man's expression turned serious, but he didn't say anything else. Instead, he stared at Fengjiu and said, "Let this kid give the young master the injection. If anything happens, I've already told him. His acupuncture skills shouldn't be a problem." The old man took a sip of the hot tea brought by the guard to ease the tension in his heart. The old man glanced at Fengjiu and then said to the other person, "And there's no better way right now, is there?" The old man pursed his lips and didn't say anything else. Yes, there was indeed no other way. Given young master's condition, it was too late to go back. Furthermore, that wound, he glanced at the wound and frowned. We must save the young master. After the old man drank the tea, he calmed himself down and walked to the front. He cleaned his hands again and looked at the various sharp knives that he was going to use. He couldn't help but feel nervous again. He hesitated. Which knife should he use? Fengjiu watched from the side and couldn't help but frown. Seeing that the old man didn't move for a long time, he tried to suggest, "Senior, if you can't do it, let me do it." Chapter 1368. Since she was going to save him, of course she wanted to save his life. However, looking at the old man, his status was too important, causing him to lose his composure as a doctor. If he lost his composure, how could he be the one to perform the operation? "What? You're going to do it?" The old man was startled. "Do you understand? Even if you did, I wouldn't be at ease letting you perform the operation. Do you know that this is close to the heart? If you're not careful, I know, but I think you're too nervous. You're not in the right state to perform the operation," she said directly and walked forward. "This level of surgery is just a small operation for me. Let me do it. You can help me from the side." Hearing this, the old man was startled. He couldn't help but step aside. "All right." Before he could finish, he was interrupted. "No." The old man in gray who had walked out earlier said in a low voice. "This kid's background is unknown. How can we let him perform the operation? If there's any mistake, the young master's life will be in danger." Hearing this, the old man was in a difficult position. He looked at Fengjiu, then looked at the old man. "But, just like what this little brother said, I'm a little nervous. I'm worried." "Then take it easy. You have to be the one to perform the operation," he said with his hands behind his back. He felt that no matter what, letting his own people perform the operation was far more reassuring than letting a stranger perform the operation. What's more, how skilled could a kid be in medicine? This matter concerned the young master's life. He had to be careful. "All right then." The old man had no choice but to nod in agreement. He calmed his mind and picked up a sharp knife from the side. "There are remnants in the wound. I have to cut open the wound and remove the remnants. During the treatment process, unrelated people should not speak and disturb my mind. Little brother, please seal the acupoints here." "All right," Fengjiu responded. He took out a silver needle and sealed the acupoints. Then he stood aside and watched. Seeing this, the old man used a small knife to cut open the wound a little. The residue was inside the wound, and along with the black poisonous blood gushing out, it was even more difficult to remove the residue. As time passed, more and more blood flowed out of the wound. However, the shards that remained in the wound had not been removed. This made the old man even more nervous and his mood even heavier, especially when he felt that his breathing was getting weaker and weaker. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead. In the end, his body trembled and he involuntarily retreated. When the others saw this, their hearts sank, especially the old man. He asked, "What's going on? My ability is limited. I'm afraid. I'm afraid," he said in shame, not daring to look into the other's eyes. You're trying to kill young master." The old man was furious, but the boy beside him had already stepped forward and took the knife and tweezers. Immediately, he asked angrily, "What do you want to do?" "To save people." Feng Jiu glanced at him. "Of course, you have to pay me." "Not much, just 100,000 gold coins." "Little brother, this is not a joke," the old man hurriedly said. "If you can't save him, I'll bury you with him," another old man warned. Chi. Chapter 1369. "Senior, come over and apply the wound," Feng Jiu said without raising her head. Oh. The old man came back to his senses and looked at the long wound. His heart twitched, and he could only go forward to help her. Every time blood gushed out, he would use a clean cloth with tweezers to wipe the blood clean, so that the doctor could see clearly when she was cutting. The few people at the side watched with their hearts tightened and sweat seeped out of their foreheads. However, Feng Jiu's expression was indifferent and her actions were calm. She wore a mask and was very careful when she cut. When she found the location of the fragments in the wound, she took them out bit by bit. When they saw that the fragments were taken out, they couldn't help but secretly breathe a sigh of relief. They couldn't tell that this brat had some real skills. After about an hour, after the rotten flesh was removed, Feng Jiu put the small knife aside and took out a needle and thread from her space to sew the wound. "What are you doing with this needle and thread?" The old man in gray couldn't help but ask, his brows furrowed. "Sewing the wound." She said it as a matter of course, but it shocked the few people at the side. What? Sewing the wound? As soon as he said that, he saw her sewing the wound with a needle and thread. Seeing her sewing the flesh as if it was clothes, the few people were shocked. This can be done? Okay, the stitches will be removed in 7 days. The wound treatment is done, but... She looked at the stunned people at the side and laughed. "But what?" The few people couldn't help but follow her words and ask, "But you haven't cured the poison in his body. Moreover, the wound has been treated, but he will have a fever tonight. This fever can be big or small. If he can't endure it, then all your efforts will be in vain." Hearing this, the few people looked at each other. In the end, it was the old doctor who asked, "Then what is this little brother's solution?" After seeing his technique, he was full of admiration for this young man. One had to know that even he couldn't stitch the flesh without changing his expression, but he was calm and composed. This kind of temperament, this kind of cultivation was extraordinary. "I have medicine. Do you want to buy it?" She smiled and squinted her eyes. "After taking my medicine, the poison in his body will be gone in 4 hours. After taking my medicine, there won't be a problem even if he has a fever tonight." Seeing the gray-robed old man's disapproving expression, she smiled and said, "My medicine is different from yours. It can't be found outside. You have to think carefully. If you miss out on me, you won't have a chance to find me again." "What medicine is so powerful? How much?" "I'll buy it," the gray-robed old man said. He felt that this poor kid's item wasn't worth much. After he got it, he would let someone test it. After confirming that there were no problems and that it was effective, he could give it to the young master. "And I?" "How can I be wrong? This is something I personally refined. Could it be that my medical skills are not enough to prove that my medicine is very effective?" Feng Jiu raised his eyebrows and glanced at him. Chapter 1370. Seeing this, the old man's face darkened as he said to Fengjiu, "Where's the medicine? Give it to me." "I gave you the money and the goods at the same time." Fengjiu had already walked to the side to wash his hands, and the unconscious person had already been pushed into the inner room. "Little brother, let's talk outside," the old doctor said as he invited Fengjiu outside. Thus, other than a few people who stayed in the room to guard, the few of them went outside to sit by the stone table. The servants served the tea and then left. "Little brother, the stitches you just sewed, you can remove it after 7 days." Fengjiu took off her mask and put it away. Then, she took a sip of tea. "Then what about the medicine you mentioned? Can you let me take a look?" the old doctor asked. Fengjiu thought for a while and nodded. "That's fine too." She took out 2 bottles from her sleeves and placed them on the table. Looking at the special transparent bottles and the liquid inside, the old doctor was slightly surprised. His heart skipped a beat as he opened it and took a sniff. With one sniff, his eyes lit up. "This is good stuff. Little brother, do you have more of these?" When the old man saw this, he took the bottles and looked at them suspiciously. With one look, his expression changed slightly as he asked in surprise, "Did you really make these? Didn't you want to buy them? Here it is." She pointed at the 2 bottles of medicine and said, "Give me the money. Also, where's my friend? Your friend has been taken care of by our people." The old man in gray said slowly, "We can give you the money, but you can't leave yet." "What?" Fengjiu raised her eyebrows and raised her voice. "My young master hasn't woken up yet. How can you leave? What if he doesn't wake up?" "Pfft. So you're saying that you want me to stay for a few more days?" She glanced at the 2 of them and said, "Little brother, how about this? You stay and take care of the young master. We won't let you work for nothing." The old doctor said as he looked at Fengjiu and smiled, "Also, your medical skills are better than mine. If you can stay, we can rest assured. Didn't I say that he'll be fine? He'll wake up in 1 or 2 days at most. He'll take my medicine. He won't die." She rolled her eyes, speechless. She didn't plan to stay here for long. Moreover, if she stayed here for a few more days, she would definitely be delayed on the road. "You don't have the final say. Wait until my young master wakes up," the gray-robed old man said firmly. Seeing this, Fengjiu's eyes flickered. He thought for a moment and said with a smile, "All right, then I'll stay. However, my friend is injured and weak. Help me hire a carriage and send him back first." Hearing this, the 2 looked at each other and nodded. Sure, as long as they could keep this brat, it would be fine. In any case, they only needed him, and the other one was dispensable. "All right, it's settled then. Next, pay me the money first." She pointed at the 2 bottles of liquid medicine. Hearing this, the old man in gray called out, and a middle-aged man appeared. He said to Fengjiu, "Come with me." Fengjiu shrugged and didn't care about being treated lightly. He got up and left with the middle-aged man. After he left, the 2 old men started talking. "Is this kid's medical skills really better than yours?" the old man in gray asked. Chapter 1371. At noon, in front of the clinic. "Juyu, you go home first. Remember to pay me the money you owe me. I'll ask you for it when I come over." Fengjiu patted him on the shoulder and said with a smile, "Then you're really not going? Is it really okay to stay here?" Juyu asked worriedly. "It's okay. The seniors here take good care of me. Besides, I'm also an idle person who travels everywhere. It's not a problem for me to stay here for 10 days or half a month. But your body hasn't recovered yet. You can take the carriage back and recuperate on the way back." "All right then. You must be careful." Hearing Fengjiu's words, he could only leave first. After all, he couldn't afford to offend the people in this clinic. Even if he stayed, he wouldn't be of much help. "Go. You don't have to worry about those people. They've already told you. They won't trouble you again." "All right, then I'll go." After thanking him, he sat in the carriage and looked at the young man standing in front of the clinic. His eyes were fixed on his face, trying to remember his face in his mind. Even if he couldn't see him again in the future, he wouldn't forget. "Little brother, are you relieved now?" the old doctor said with a smile. Come, let's go in. I want to discuss with you the method you used to stitch up the wound." Thus, Fengjiu followed him in. After being pulled by the doctor for 2 hours, she said, "I'm going back to rest. I'll go over again tonight." All right. Had good rest," the old doctor said as he watched Fengjiu go back. Then he took a book and recorded the useful things that Fengjiu said. Back in the room, Fengjiu went to bed and had a good sleep. She didn't get up until evening and asked someone to prepare dinner. After eating, she saw that the sky wasn't dark yet. She walked around and then went to the courtyard next door. As soon as she entered, she felt several eyes on her. She didn't care and went inside. She saw the old man in gray and the old doctor guarding the bed. "Ha ha, little brother, you're here." The old doctor came forward with a smile and said, "Young master is a little feverish, but after I fed him some medicine according to your instructions, the fever subsided. Even the red and swollen areas around the wound subsided a little." "All right, let me take a look." She nodded and went forward to check his pulse. "Yes, the poison has been cured. His pulse is stable." "Yes, little brother, your medicinal liquid is truly a divine liquid. I have never seen such a special effect." The old doctor's eyes lit up as he spoke. He asked, "Little brother, do you have any more of this?" "Good things are always rare. Moreover, your young master doesn't need to stay here. His life is no longer in danger. Ordinary medicine will do." She smiled and said, "Since there's nothing else, I'll go back first." "That won't do," the gray-robed elder said. "Didn't you say that tonight is a dangerous night?" Fengjiu was about to say something when the old man in gray took out a long box and handed it to her. "This is your reward." Seeing this, she opened it and saw that it was full of caterpillar fungus. She couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. "You're really giving it to me?" The quality was really not ordinary. He took it out so casually. He was really not an ordinary person. Chapter 1372. All right then. Thank you. She kept her things and found a place to sit down. "Let me stand guard here. You guys can leave. Also, staying up late is very tiring. Get someone to cook something nourishing and refreshing for me to eat." Hearing this, the two of them looked at each other and nodded. "All right then. We'll leave this place to you. We'll stand guard outside." There were still people watching from the shadows. They weren't afraid that he would act rashly. Furthermore, he wouldn't gain anything from acting rashly against their young master. He shouldn't be that stupid. Seeing that they had left and that the people in the shadows were still watching, Fengjiu didn't bother about them. The person lying here was their young master. They naturally couldn't withdraw all the people in the shadows. However, if she wanted to leave, she wasn't in a hurry. Tonight wasn't the best time to leave. Hence, she walked around the room. Seeing that there wasn't a soft bed, she got someone to bring a soft bed over, then sat on the soft bed and flipped through a book until supper was sent over. Then, she checked the person lying on the bed again. Seeing that the mask was still on, she didn't think of taking it off to see what was going on. After all, knowing too much wouldn't do her any good. That night, as she expected, after taking her medicine, the person lying on the bed didn't have a fever and the night passed peacefully. Only at daybreak did she return to her room to rest, and once she entered her room, she didn't go out for the whole day. In the room next to the courtyard, the old doctor checked the wound in the evening, then nodded and smiled at the gray-robed old man. "The young master's wound is recovering well. The critical period is past. We just have to wait for him to wake up." "That's good." The gray-robed old man was relieved and said, "That kid has some ability, such a person. If we can recruit him to be one of our people." The old doctor interrupted him and said, "You don't have to think about it. That little brother doesn't look like someone who is bound by rules. Furthermore, with his skills, it's obvious that he's extraordinary. He's definitely not a nobody." Seeing this, the gray-robed old man didn't say anything, only stroking his beard and said, "He went back to rest this morning and hasn't come out since. Although the young master's wound is gradually recovering, we can't be careless in case the wound gets infected again. It's getting late. Get someone to call him over to take care of him." "All right." As the old doctor spoke, he planned to call him personally, who knew that when he turned around, he would see the yawning youth walk in with a sleepy face. "Hee hee, little brother, you're here. Senior, What medicinal cuisine did you prepare for me today? Feng Jiu patted his cheeks and asked expectantly after recovering some of his energy. Hearing those words, the old physician shook his head and chuckled. Wait a moment, I'll get someone to bring it over. In just 2 days, he knew that this young man loved to eat, especially delicacies. By the way, I'll return this medicinal cuisine book to you. I've finished reading it. Feng Jiu handed the book back to him. Seeing this, the old man accepted it and sat down with him. As for the other person, he entered the room. Not long after the two had finished their dinner, Feng Jiu entered the room again, and the others left again. No one paid much attention to it until the next morning. When they knocked on the door and entered, they found that the young man was not in the room. The two old men were startled and exchanged glances. Then the gray-robed old man asked, "Where's that young man?" Chapter 1373. That's right. Where's that young man? I think he went out in the middle of the night, and then he didn't come back. A voice came from the dark, intermittent and somewhat guilty. What? The two old men were startled, and the old man in gray was furious. He went out in the middle of the night and didn't come back, and none of you want to check on him? The people in the dark were silent. They thought that he couldn't escape, so they only guarded the young master, thinking that it was fine as long as the young master was fine. Who would have thought that the young man would run away in the middle of the night? What are you waiting for? Why aren't you calling people to chase after him? The young master's stitches haven't been removed. What if an accident happens? The old man in gray shouted. Just as the people in the dark responded, the old doctor sighed. Forget it. It's impossible to chase after him now. He can escape under the eyes of so many people. How can he be caught so easily? Thinking about it, that young man already had the intention to escape, or else why would he let them make the arrangements to send his friends away first? But the young master's life is no longer in danger. We just have to wait for him to wake up and his wounds to recover. Then we can remove the stitches. The old doctor stroked his beard and said, All right then. The old man in gray flicked his sleeves and walked out. The old doctor followed him out, but just as he was about to step out, he suddenly heard a cough behind him. He couldn't help but be startled and quickly turned back. Young master? The young master is awake? He went forward to check on him in surprise. Even the old man in gray who heard the sound outside quickly walked back. The man on the bed opened his eyes and looked at the two of them, indicating that he wanted to get up. Seeing this, the two hurriedly stopped him. Young master, your wounds haven't healed. You shouldn't sit up. Report. An anxious voice came from outside. When the old man in gray heard this, he said to the old doctor, I'll take a look at the young master. I'll be back soon. As he spoke, he bowed to the man on the bed and retreated. The man on the bed gently touched his wound, feeling that it was slightly warm, but it was not like before. Under the mask, the corners of his mouth twitched, and his voice was hoarse and weak. As expected, I won't die. Who was it that saved me? Hearing this, the old doctor was slightly surprised, but he still reported, Young Lord is wise. The one who held the knife and treated young Lord was a young man, but he sneaked away in the middle of the night yesterday. I'm ashamed that I couldn't let young Lord see him. Hearing this, the man on the bed paused. He seemed to have thought of something and did not speak again. At this moment, outside. What are all of you doing? You actually allowed him to do such a thing without anyone knowing. The gray-robed old man shouted angrily, unable to hide the anger in his eyes. Get out of here. The old doctor walked out and said, The young master has asked you to go in. Hearing this, the gray-robed elder suppressed his anger and walked in. When he arrived inside, he heard the young master's question. What happened? The gray-robed elder paused for a moment before replying. It's the young master who saved the young master. When he escaped in the middle of the night, he took quite a number of things with him. No one in the courtyard knew about it last night and only discovered it this morning. The old doctor was also stunned when he heard this. Take away a lot of things. That young man? Wasn't that a little too daring? It's just a few things. What's there to be surprised about? The man on the bed closed his eyes and said, let's forget about this matter. When the two heard this, they looked at each other and could only respectfully reply, yes. Chapter 1374. Fengjiu, who had left overnight, was resting under a tree. At least this mountain path was safe. After flying for so long on Flying Feather, the people behind her could not possibly catch up with her. She took out some water from her space and drank it. After catching her breath, she looked around. Seeing that this place was quiet and secluded with no one walking around, she leaped onto a big tree with lush leaves to rest. She wanted to rest for a while and recover her energy before continuing on her journey. There were almost no pedestrians on the quiet mountain path. Occasionally, she could only hear the sound of leaves rustling in the wind. Amidst the green leaves, a figure was leisurely resting among the branches with her eyes closed. It was as if she had become one with the trees, and no one could sense her presence. Until evening, she woke up from the tree and continued on her journey on Flying Feather under the cover of the sky. A few days later, outside Danyang City, Fengjiu, who was dressed in shabby beggar clothes, yawned as she entered the city and headed inside. She had finally arrived here after much difficulty. She had spent a lot of time walking and stopping along the way. Counting the days, she rested at Lung Hua's place in the city for a day before setting off for Danyang Sect. There were a lot of people in Danyang City, so the streets were crowded. She didn't know who bumped into her, but she bumped into a person in front of her. When that person turned around and saw her dressed as a beggar, he cursed loudly. Where did this beggar come from? Get lost. As he spoke, he lifted his leg and gave her a fierce kick. Fengjiu stepped to the side to avoid it. His kick landed on someone behind her. Damn it, you dare to kick me. Are you looking for death? Unexpectedly, the one who was kicked was a burly man. After being kicked for no reason, he rolled up his sleeves and punched the man in front of him. Bang! Hiss! You big guy. How dare you hit me? Do you know who I am? The man sucked in a cold breath. He covered his eyes and cursed angrily. Then, he pounced forward again. The surrounding people scattered. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, they all moved to the side. In the crowd, Fengjiu's mouth twitched when she saw this scene. Taking advantage of the chaos, she hurriedly left. When she arrived at a courtyard, she looked left and right. Seeing that no one was looking, she jumped in. Roar! Master! Red Tiger, who was lying in the courtyard, immediately leaped forward and pounced into Fengjiu's arms. Master, master, you're back. Lao Bai also excitedly shook his ponytail and went forward, but he was too big to pounce on Fengjiu. He could only intimately rub his face against hers. Master! Little Black ran over as well. The three beasts gathered around her, looking very happy. I'm back, Fengjiu said with a smile. Then, Lung Hua walked out. Master! Lung Hua stepped forward and bowed. How's everything at home? She asked. Everything is fine. My older sister and the others are looking after the shop. They haven't come back yet, Lung Hua said. Seeing her dirty and messy clothes, he said, Mistress, I'll prepare some water for you to take a bath first. I'll go to the store with you later. Okay. She nodded and walked inside. 2 hours later, Fengjiu, Lung Hua, and Red Tiger arrived at one of their shops in the city. When they saw that there were many people outside, pointing and discussing, they couldn't help but look at each other. Excuse me. Chapter 1375. Speak. How do you want to compensate us? He died after eating your medicine. Tell me, how do you want to compensate us? If you don't give us an explanation today, we'll smash your shop. That's right. Give us an explanation. Hearing the voices inside, Fengjiu looked inside and saw Du Fan and Lung Shuang inside. In front of them was a lifeless person on a stretcher. However, Du Fan and Lung Shuang were both smiling and expressionless. They formed a stark contrast to the 7 or 8 people who were glaring angrily inside the shop. The sharp-eyed Du Fan saw Fengjiu and Lung Shuang standing outside the shop. His eyes lit up. As he walked out quickly, he inadvertently stepped on the finger of the person on the stretcher. The finger that was hanging outside moved slightly. Noticing this, Fengjiu smiled and walked in. What's going on? Is this person dead? Yes, they said that the person died after taking the medicine in our shop. Is that so? She asked casually. It might be, so I'm thinking of taking care of it. Du Fan said with a smile. Oh, how do you plan to take care of it? Fengjiu asked cooperatively. Meanwhile, Du Fan turned to look at the robust man at the side and said, I'm really sorry. Since all of you died from eating the medicine in our store, then we can compensate all of you. What do all of you think? Hearing this, the 7 or 8 people were delighted. They looked at each other and said with a straight face, That's more like it. However, before that, I want to verify if he really died after eating our medicine. So, I plan to cut open the corpse's abdomen to check. When these words were spoken, the 7 or 8 people were all dumbfounded. Even the lifeless corpse lying on the ground seemed to stiffen for a moment. What? Cut open his abdomen? One of them stuttered. That's right. Even if I want to lose money, I have to look at the reason, right? As long as you nod your head, I'll immediately send someone to compensate you with 100,000 gold coins. As for this corpse, don't worry, we'll help you bury it. Du Fan had a serious look on his face, as if this was a good suggestion. However, when those people heard these words, they were hesitant and tempted. 100,000 gold coins. How long would they have to earn that much money? However, to cut open her stomach, when the onlookers heard this, they said, That's right. Since they're willing to fork out the money, they definitely have to investigate if the person really died because of their medicine. Since the person is already dead, what's the harm in letting them perform an autopsy? That's right. He's already dead. What's there to be afraid of? Shuang, go to the back and get a butcher's knife. The longer one. Du Fan said to Long Shuang. Hearing these words, the person on the ground started to sweat. Especially after hearing Du Fan's words, he felt a chill run down his spine. Suddenly, he jumped up and ran out. I don't want it anymore. I don't want it anymore. If I keep pretending, I'll lose my life. Chapter 1376. So it was extortion. That's right. That person is clearly still alive. But when he was carried here, he really seemed to have stopped breathing. Something must have been done. That's true. The crowd dispersed as they discussed. Without any excitement to watch, it was quiet in front of the door. Only Fengjiu and a few others were left. Mistress, come in. Du Fan said as he invited her in. Lung Hua closed the door behind them and went to the back together. Mistress. The two of them bowed to her. That's enough. Fengjiu waved her hand and asked, Did we run into any trouble here during this period? Hearing this, they looked at each other and smiled. Mistress, don't worry. Although we ran into some trouble, it's just a small problem. We can handle it. That's good. She nodded and said, It's our first time here. If we rely on ourselves, we can't casually make enemies with others. However, if there's really a problem that you can't solve and I'm not here, you can go to the black market to seek protection. Yes. The few of them answered and asked her if the trip was smooth. Did you run into any danger on the way? Fengjiu gave them a rough explanation and gave them some instructions. At the same time, she took out some medicinal liquid for them to sell in the shop. I'm going to Danyang Peak tomorrow. Every once in a while, I'll send some medicinal liquid for you to sell in the shop. In addition, the 3 of you have to work hard on your cultivation. Yes, we know. The 3 of them answered. They left only 1 bottle of medicinal liquid in the shop from Fengjiu's 10 bottles and handed the rest to Lung Hua for safekeeping. After sitting in the shop for a while, Fengjiu left. She brought Lung Hua and Chi Hu for a stroll in the city before returning to the courtyard to rest. The next morning, Fengjiu changed into green clothes and changed her appearance. Only then did she head to the boundary where Danyang Peak was located. Unlike other sects who recruited disciples, Danyang Peak only recruited disciples who had the talent to refine elixirs because they focused on refining elixirs. In addition, they were the #1 sect in the history of elixirs. Therefore, some of their alchemy apprentices were selected from various big clans. This 3-day disciple recruitment, to put it bluntly, was to recruit disciples who did odd jobs. However, she wanted to sneak in and find out about her mother's whereabouts first. As for the outer sect disciples and miscellaneous disciples, there was no difference to her. She didn't need them to teach her refining skills, and she didn't go in to learn how to refine pills. She just wanted to find her mother. She walked for a while and occasionally flew. Until evening, Fengjiu found a place to rest. She planned to go to Danyang tomorrow. Anyway, she had 3 days, so she was not in a hurry. She leaned against a tree and drank water and ate something. Then, she closed her eyes and rested. However, when she calmed down, she smelled a faint smell of blood in the air. She was startled when she smelled the blood. She opened her eyes and tiptoed to follow the smell of blood. She wanted to see why there was a smell of blood in this place. After all, ordinary people did not dare to kill people at the foot of Danyang Peak. Chapter 1377. Seeing the dozens of people wearing the Core Yang sect's uniform rushing out, her eyes flickered. Just as she was about to say something, she heard one of them scolding, "How dare you? How dare you kill people in the territory of our Danyang sect?" Hearing this, Fengjiu raised his eyebrows. His gaze fell on the person who spoke and continued, "You misunderstood. I'm a passerby who was on my way to the Danyang sect to participate in the entrance examination. I was resting in the forest when I smelled blood and came to take a look. There's only one person around here. If you didn't kill him, then who did it?" Hearing this, she glanced at that person with a strange expression. "You keep saying that I killed someone, but do you have any evidence? I just walked out and I haven't even gotten close to that person. So how can I kill him? Moreover, I have no enmity with him. So why would I kill him?" Other than the leader, the others couldn't help but size up Fengjiu after hearing his words. He saw that the young man was clean and dressed simply. His eyes were pure and innocent, and he didn't look like someone who would kill. "Senior brother Lin, maybe it wasn't this young man who killed them. Look at his clean green robes," and he even walked over from that direction. A man whispered, "Yes, of course, we have to find the murderer, but we can't wrong the innocent. It must be this young man who killed him. This is already the 6th person we've killed. Moreover, we've been patrolling this area and haven't seen anyone else. It's very suspicious for this person to suddenly appear here. If it's not him, then who could it be?" The man in the lead stared at Fengjiu with a gloomy gaze and shouted, "Kid, confess honestly. Are you the one who has been robbing and killing people in this forest recently?" Fengjiu secretly rolled his eyes. This person was simply an idiot. Even if it was her, she wouldn't be stupid enough to answer such a question. However, looking at his posture, it seemed that he was certain that it was her. She immediately walked up to him and said, "I only came here today. As I said earlier, I came here because I smelled blood when I was resting in the forest." She looked at the person who was hung up and said to the other two, "Senior brothers, can I trouble you to put him down first?" "Who's your senior brother? Don't call him that." As the two of them spoke, they still put him down. Fengjiu smiled and walked forward. Two of them blocked his path and asked, "What are you doing?" "Let me check your cause of death and time of death. You know how to perform an autopsy?" The two men were surprised. "Yes, I have some experience." As she spoke, she took out a pair of gloves from her sleeves and put them on. As she unbuttoned her clothes, her expression changed slightly, and she said, "This person died less than 2 hours ago. He fainted after inhaling the sleeping gas. After he fainted, he was hung upside down and his tongue was cut off. Then his throat was slit and the tendons of his limbs were cut off. In addition, this person's manhood was also cut off. This kind of killing method was used to vent one's anger. She had been to many places, but this was the first time she encountered such a pervert. It was one thing to kill someone, but to torture them before they died. It could be seen that this person's twisted mind had reached a perverted level. This kind of person really had to be caught. Otherwise, there would definitely be more deaths next time. Chapter 1378. You said earlier that there were a few people who were killed. What about the time and place of their deaths? Are there any similarities between the people? Actually, you can start researching in this area. Maybe you can catch that pervert before he kills the next person. You have to come with us. The leader, Lin, stared at Fengjiu and said, "You said all this. Although you said that you just arrived here today and that the murderer can't be you, this is only your side of the story. Before we catch the murderer, you have to come with us." Hearing this, Fengjiu frowned. "But I still have to go to the Danyang sex assessment. Who's going to be responsible if I miss the opportunity?" Puffed. One of them sneered. He looked at Fengjiu and said with a smile, "The sect only recruits outer disciples who do odd jobs. Even if you go up, you may not be recruited. However, if we help you say a few words, you can directly enter the sect without any assessment. Which of the two do you think is more worthwhile?" Hearing this, Fengjiu's eyes flickered, but his face was full of disbelief. "Are you serious? You're not bluffing? What if I can't get in?" "Bluffing?" The male disciple raised his chin and said proudly, "You don't know who I am, do you? My master is the eldest disciple of the Three Sons Grandmaster. It only takes a single word from my master to let a random person enter the sect." "Is that so?" Her eyes lit up and she smiled. "All right, I'll go with you." The Three Sons Grandmaster was famous in the Danyang sect. Her mother was his direct disciple. She should be doing well in the sect, right? Since this man's master was the eldest disciple of the Three Sons Grandmaster, he should know some news about her mother. Then, thinking of this, she smiled and went forward to salute. "Senior brother, how should I address you?" "My surname is Luo, and my name is Hung. You can call me Senior Brother Luo." He waved his hand and looked at her. "Yes, Senior Brother Luo. Please take care of me in the future." Then, she bowed to the others before following behind Luo Hung. Seeing this, the others didn't say anything. They just got someone to take care of the corpses. Then, they walked into the forest and patrolled the area. At the same time, they told Fengjiu about the deaths of the previous few people. So many people walked around in the forest, but they didn't find anything. Instead, they met some people from the alchemy sect courtyard, so they were warned to be careful. Then, everyone stopped. "How about this? Let's search in groups of 4. This way, we can search a larger area. If anything happens, just give us a shout." The man surnamed Lin, who was the leader, said as he divided everyone into small groups of 4. In the end, only Fengjiu and Luo Hong were left. They looked at each other and heard the voice of the man surnamed Lin. "It just so happens that only the 2 of you are left. Since that's the case, the 2 of you can form your own team. You want to team up with him?" Luo Hong frowned and glanced at Fengjiu. "You're only at the middle stage of the Foundation establishment realm. If you encounter any danger, won't you implicate me?" Fengjiu grinned embarrassedly. "It's okay. If we can't beat them, we can run." Chapter 1379. All right. Let's go over there then." Luo Hong pointed in a direction and spoke to the others. Then, he and Fengjiu headed in the other direction. When they reached a place where no one was around, Fengjiu glanced at Luo Hong and asked, "Senior Brother Luo, I heard that Founder Three Sons has taken in a female disciple, right? Have you seen that female disciple before?" "Oh, you know about this as well?" Luo Hong glanced at Fengjiu and said, "Our martial aunt isn't from the 8 great empires. Although she has some talent in pill refinement, in a sect like the Danyang sect, she's nothing special. Founder Three Sons' last disciple, no matter what, her position in the sect shouldn't be low. Moreover, if she wasn't favored by Founder Three Sons, he wouldn't have taken her in as his last disciple." She spoke again as she looked at Luo Hong. "You've asked me this question. If you asked anyone else, they'd definitely tell you that her position in the sect isn't low. After all, she's the last disciple of Founder Three Sons, and she's the only female disciple. Founder Three Sons must have treated her extremely well." Hearing this, Fengjiu's heart sank and asked, "Isn't that the case?" "That seems to be the case. However, there was one time when I saw her standing in front of the pill wall and crying. Although she was beautiful, there was always a trace of worry between her brows. I thought that maybe the Three Sons' ancestor didn't treat her well. However, I couldn't verify this because my martial aunt rarely walks around the sect. Feng lowered his eyes and hid the look in his eyes. His heart was slightly clenched. Was her mother having a bad time in the Danyang sect? Perhaps she is homesick? Founder Three Sons' last disciple is by her side. She should be able to go home occasionally to visit, right? I don't know about that. I just said that she doesn't usually walk around the sect. The only person in the sect who knows is that she's the last disciple of Founder Three Sons. No one else knows. At this point, he suddenly came to his senses and asked, "Why are you asking so much about my martial aunt? Do you know her?" Feng Jiu shook his head. "No, I'm just curious." Seeing this, he kindly reminded him, "What's there to be curious about? Even if you enter the sect, you'll only be a servant. Just do your job well. If you're too curious about other things, it won't be good for you." "Yes, I know. Thank you for your reminder, Senior Brother Luo." She smiled as she gave her thanks. After walking around for a while, she didn't bump into anyone, so she smiled and said, "Senior Brother Luo, I feel that the two of us are just like bait right now. Do you think that perverted killer has his eyes on us?" Upon hearing this, Luo Heng's body stiffened and his face turned pale. He said nervously, "You don't talk nonsense. What bait? It sounds scary. I'm not bait. If that perverted killer dares to appear, I'll definitely teach him a lesson. Yes, with Senior Brother Luo here, I feel more at ease. If we encounter any danger, Senior Brother Luo must remember to look after me," she said with a smile. Chapter 1380. Although he said that, when he looked around, there was still vigilance and a hint of fear in his eyes. After all, the killer's methods were too frightening. If it were anyone else, they would feel fear in their heart, worried that they would encounter the killer. Feng Jiu, on the other hand, was smiling as she walked beside him. Compared to Luo Hong, who was timid and vigilant, she seemed to be more composed. He was still analyzing the situation in his heart. The assassin had specifically targeted the people of the Danyang sect. Moreover, he had severed the man's limbs, slit the man's throat, and cut off the man's genitals. "Hey, are you going to the Danyang sect?" Luo Hong shouted. A burly man in front of them turned around and glanced at them. Seeing that Luo Hong was wearing the uniform of the Danyang sect, he stepped forward and bowed. "Yes, I'm going to the Danyang sect." "Are you two disciples of the Danyang sect?" "That's right. Let me tell you, this area is not very safe. Be careful when you go up the mountain. If you encounter any danger, call for help immediately," Luo Hong reminded him. The burly man was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, "I'm not boasting, but I have no problem protecting myself. You two don't have to worry." Feng Jiu smiled and said, "It's better to be careful. 6 or 7 people have died in this area. They were all killed." Hearing that, the man was slightly surprised and nodded. "Thank you, I'll be more careful." Then he cupped his hands and left, heading up the mountain. Seeing that the man had left, the two walked around the forest and found nothing. Luo Hong went to rest under a tree. "Let's rest for a while. We didn't find anything after walking around. Maybe the man has left." He sat under the tree and took a sip of water. Feng Jiu thought about it. According to what they said earlier, one person would die almost every 6 hours. Then, it had been almost 6 hours since the previous incident. If they really had to kill one person every 6 hours, then it should be around this time. However, it was not easy to find the killer in such a big place. Moreover, the killer used knockout powder. Even if he did, the victim would not be able to make a sound. However, just as he was thinking, a light flashed through his mind. "Senior Brother Luo, you said that the people who were killed were all burly men in their 30s? Feng Jiu looked at Luo Hong and asked. "Yes, the people who died were all as strong as bulls, but they didn't even have the ability to protect themselves. They were really too weak," Luo Hong said and looked at him. "Why are you asking this?" Feng Jiu, who was sitting at the side, immediately stood up. "Of the 2 people we met just now, one of them seemed to be a burly man around 30 years old. If the murderer specifically targeted this type of people, would it be... Do you mean that they have their eyes on that person?" Luo Hong stood up nervously and said, "That seems to be a possibility. Why don't I go find senior brother Lin and the others first? Shall we go and take a look? If we find them, that person will probably be dead soon." Calculating the time, if it's really 6 hours, then that person has probably already made his move. "Quick, let's chase after them and take a look." As she spoke, she ran in the direction of the man who had gone up the mountain. Chapter 1381. At the same time, just as Feng Jiu expected, about 200 meters ahead, the unconscious burly man they met before was being dragged into the forest. His body rubbed against the ground, making a rustling sound. That person seemed to be looking for a better place to attack as he dragged the unconscious man, muttering from time to time, "All of you deserve to die. All of you deserve to die. I will kill all of you. Kill all of you." That person's hair was disheveled and his face could not be seen clearly. He was barefooted and wore a tattered Danyang sect robe. At this moment, he was dragging the unconscious man's leg with one hand and holding a sharp dagger with the other. When Luo Hong, who was quietly approaching, saw this scene, his whole body froze and he almost screamed. It was a pair of hands that covered his mouth, allowing him to suppress his cry of surprise. Heavens! There really was a homicidal maniac, and it was someone wearing their Danyang sect robe. Could it be that the perverted homicidal maniac was from their Danyang sect? When he thought of this possibility, his body began to tremble, and he was shocked beyond belief. "Senior brother Luo? Senior brother Luo?" Feng Jiu called out in a low voice, staring straight ahead. That person looked to be less than 30 years old. His body was thin and slender, and his face could not be seen clearly. His cultivation was at the peak of the golden core stage. With such strength, he could kill the people in front without alerting anyone. It could be imagined that this person also knew medicine. He used medicine to deal with those people, so he was able to kill without alerting anyone. Just like now, that burly man was being dragged like this. She was sure that if the two of them did not appear, it would not be long before that man would die without a doubt. "Senior brother Luo, catch him," Feng Jiu said in a low voice. Hearing this, Luo Hang's face turned pale, and he stared at him with wide eyes. After removing Feng Jiu's hand, he lowered his voice and said angrily, You want to push me to my death?" That person's methods were so cruel. Not only did he cut off my tongue, he also cut off my limbs. Most importantly, he even cut off my manhood. I don't want to die so miserably. How can that be? That person is also a golden core cultivator. You're also a golden core cultivator. You can definitely beat him. Think about it. Saving that person and capturing that killer demon is a great merit. The sect will definitely reward you. Moreover, it's not too late to find senior brother Lin and the others. Could it be that you're just going to watch the man who greeted us earlier be brutally killed right in front of you? But I don't have the guts. Senior brother Luo Hong of the Danyang sect is here. Surrender now. Feng Jiu suddenly shouted and pulled Luo Hong to the front. Seeing this, his face paled a little, especially when the perverted killer who was dragging the unconscious man stopped and turned around to look at the two of them. That sinister and somewhat crazy gaze made him involuntarily shudder. You're trying to kill me," he said with a long face, his legs trembling. When he saw that person release the man and walk towards them, he was so scared that he could not even run. Quick, pull me away. My legs are weak." Chapter 1382. Luo Hang's face paled, and he screamed, "Not forward, back." He didn't want to die. As an early golden core cultivator, he was no match for a peak golden core cultivator. If he overestimated himself and went forward, he would only end up dead. Go to hell. The man with disheveled hair in front of him stabbed with a knife, and at the same time, he sprinkled a handful of medicinal powder in his hand. At that moment, Luo Hong screamed. He felt his vision blur, as if he had kicked something, and his whole body fell forward. At the same time, Feng Jiu shot out a silver needle. When the man sprinkled the medicinal powder, he didn't expect to be hit by this move. He groaned, and his sinister and crazy eyes instantly looked towards Fengjiu. Ah! Luo Hong, who was rushing forward, was suddenly pulled back by a force, avoiding the medicinal powder in front of him. He didn't know what happened, but his whole body fell directly on top of the man. Ah! Fengjiu also took the opportunity to roll down, and after falling to the ground, he cried out in alarm. At this moment, Luo Hong realized that the man under him seemed to be motionless. He couldn't help but be startled. When he got up, he saw that the man's forehead had hit a sharp stone on the ground, and his head was bleeding. He had lost consciousness. It's him? He hurriedly took a few steps back and looked at the man's face in astonishment. Fengjiu rubbed his aching limbs and stood up and said, "Senior brother Luo, you're really amazing. You caught that man in one move, but shouldn't you tie him up first?" "Ah, did I catch him?" he asked blankly. "Didn't you?" She blinked, her face full of confusion. Yes, he was knocked to the ground by me. That's why he hit the stone and fainted. I caught him. I made the first contribution." He suddenly felt proud, but when he thought of that man, he squatted down again and lifted his hair to take a look. Then, he frowned and took out a rope to tie the unconscious man up. At the side, Fengjiu discreetly took out his silver needles and kept them in his sleeves. Seeing his expression, he asked, "Senior brother Luo knows him?" "Yes, this man is from the Danyang sect, but he has been missing for several months." "How'd he end up like this? Why are you still killing people here?" he said doubtfully as he stared at the person he had tied up. He couldn't understand. "Senior Marshal Brother Luo, look, his hands and feet seem to have been tied up." Fengjiu pointed at the man's hands and feet as he asked, "Who was this man originally from the Danyang sect?" "A cultivator at the pinnacle of the Golden Core realm who also knows medicine. He shouldn't be an ordinary disciple, right? He's one of Patriarch Su Wuzi's people. I've seen him a few times, but then I heard." With that, he hesitated for a moment. Then he thought about how Meng Hao had killed people, and couldn't help but feel shocked. "Heard what?" Fengjiu asked curiously. Luo Hong was also a person who couldn't keep his mouth shut. In addition, he had doubts in his heart and wanted to find someone to talk to. So he whispered, "If I tell you, you can't tell anyone." Yes. She hurriedly nodded. "Don't worry, I'll forget what I heard." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.